Section 7 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4, Part 2. Raising the money in France is laying a tax on the people, which is sooner paid and sought to be less felt than the tax laid on any other way. When the king raises the louis d'or from 12 livres to 14, they are taken in at the mint for 13 livres, and given out for 14. So the king gains a livre on the louis d'or, and this tax comes to 20 or 25 million of livres, sometimes more, according to the quantity of money in the country. But so far from adding to the money, it stops the circulation, a part being kept up till there is occasion to export it to Holland, from whence a return is made by bill, of a sum of livre equal to the same quantity of new louis d'or that were exported of old ones, and 8 or 10% more, according as the exchange is on the Dutch side. Others who won't venture to send the money out and keep it till the new money is cried down, so save a certain part, which the king would have got if they had carried the money to the mint to be recoined. And this tax was heavy on the poorer sort of the people. 'Tis generally thought the Dutch money is not worth half what it passes for, but it will prove otherwise when examined. The bank by which most payments are made receive and pay in bank money, which is better than the English. Dagadons are at 3 guilders, and other bank money in proportion. And I am informed the current money has silver in it to the value of near, except some of their scalings, which are worse than others. The making them worse was not designed. It was an abuse occasioned by too many towns having power to coin, which abuse was stopped so soon as known, and that species cried down to 5 stivers and a half. Some propose the money may be raised, to give the little we have left a better circulation, and to bring out the hoarded money. The lowering it by degrees to take place in 3 or 4 months will have the same effect, and other good consequences. For, from what has been said, page 54 and 55, there is a reason to think, if the money were lowered to the English standard, exchange would be on our side, and the balance due us, providing the export, the import, and expense abroad continued as now. There is another argument for raising the money, which is that some goods don't yield profit enough abroad, so are not exported. If surgeons worth in Scotland £100 are worth 120 in Holland, the merchant won't export them for 20% profit. But if the money is raised to 20%, and the goods keep at the prices they had before, the same money that bought £100 of surgeons and buying now to the value of £120, and these goods being worth in Holland £144, that addition to the profit by raising the money will occasion the export of them. And this is the same as if a merchant who had 100 different sorts of goods, and was offered 30% profit upon 90 of them, but nobody offering above 20% profit for the other 10 sorts, should add a quarter to the measure by which he measured his goods, and sell all the 100 sorts for the same price he sold them before. As this merchant would find himself a considerable loser by this expedient, so will a nation who raises their money. For the same reason, it would be a greater loss to Scotland if all goods were allowed to be exported without duty, and some ought to be free of duty, and some not, according to their value abroad. The true and safe way to encourage the export of such goods as to not yield great enough profit is by drawback. If surgeons sent to Holland give only 20% profit, 10% given as drawback will encourage their export. The drawback given to the merchant is not a loss to the nation, and what is got by the manufacture or export of the goods is gained by the nation. A drawback is the best method yet known for encouraging trade, and it may be made appear that 10 or 15,000 applied that way will occasion an addition to the export to the value of £100,000, nor is any part of that £10,000 or £15,000 lost to the nation. For if A, B, and C Scotsmen get such drawback, it is the same thing to the nation, as if it had not been given. When drawbacks are paid out of funds for the support of the government, little money is applied that way, because so much is taken from the prince. But if there was a national fund for the encouragement of trade, that nation might improve trade, and undersell other nations that did not follow the same measures. But this is supposing there was money in the country to employ the people. Coining the plate will loss of the fashion, which may be valued 1/6, and would add little to the money. The plate at the Restoration was inconsiderable, having been called in a little before, since there may have been wrought 1 year with another about 60 stone weight. Of that the greater part has been melted down or exported. The remainder won't be of great value. What the plate has been imported belongs to a few men of quality, who will send it out of the country rather than lose the fashion, and in that they do a service to the country, providing they don't spend it abroad, because wrought plate will sell for more silver at London than it will melt to here. If it is proposed the money be allayed, and the advantage of the allay be given to the owners of the plate, suppose the new money with allay be raised to double the denomination. 5 shillings a plate with the fashion worth 6 shillings will give it the mint 10 shillings allayed money. But even then the plate will not be brought in voluntarily, for that the plate sold in England, and the value brought back by bill, will yield from 11 to 12 shillings exchange being above the par, and 6 pence supposed to be got for the fashion of the ounce of plate. If it be necessary to coin the plate, such plate should be allowed to be exported as can be sold abroad for more than its weight, security being given to import money or bullion to the value. Some propose a regulation of the balance of trade, by retrenching the consumption of foreign goods, and expense England. So the balance being brought to be on our side, we may become rich by living within our yearly value, as we became poor by spending beyond it. Such a regulation will have its difficulties. First, to discharge all or a greater part of the import will lessen considerably the revenue of the crown, and Her Majesty may not think good to give the royal assent to such a regulation, unless equivalent be given. And second, such a regulation would not be so strictly kept, but a part of what was used to be imported would be stolen. Third, the residence of our princes being in England, we are under necessity of having ministry there, employments being at the disposal of the prince. The London being a place of more diversion than Edinburgh, the gentry will continue to go to London for places or pleasure. But allowing the royal assent for given to such regulation, either with or without an equivalent, and the regulation could be so strictly kept that nothing were imported contrary to that law, and allow £20,000 could be saved of the expense in England, so that the import and expense abroad should be £6,000 less than last year. Yet there are other difficulties that I fear will make the regulation ineffectual. First, suppose the balance last year due by us was £20,000. The import and expense abroad less than £6,000. These who propose this regulation may think a balance will be due to us of £40,000. But as the bank may have supplied us with £6,000 of notes, more than the money in bank, and as £20,000 is supposed to have been exported last year, so money being less than £80,000, the next year's export may be so much less valuable, the want of that money having set idle a part of the people were then employed, and a greater balance be due than last year, notwithstanding of the regulation. Second, £40,000 first cost of goods imported, and £20,000 spent abroad, lessened the consumption of the goods of the country, and the export was by so much greater as the consumption of the goods of the country was lessened. But this regulation occasioning a greater consumption of the goods of the country, the export will be less. Third, several merchants may have exported the goods those had not much profit upon the export of them, but because of the profit to be made upon the import, which being lessened may likewise lessen the export. Fourth, if Scotland discharge or put a very high duty on the goods of other nations may discharge Scots goods. Allowing there were no difficulties in regulating the balance of trade, and that the same measures were followed as are followed in Holland, we would grow richer, but their riches would increase in the same proportion, and 30 years hence Scotland would be as poor as now in comparison with Holland. If two countries equal in their product, people, etc., the one with £100,000 of money and living within its yearly value, so that the first year a balance is due of £20,000, the second year of £25,000, and so on. The other country with 20 millions of money and consuming more than the yearly value, so that the million is sent out to pay the balance, the second year £1,200,000, and so on. And this country will be soon poor, and the other be soon rich. But if that people who has 20 millions of money will retrench in proportion to the other, they will be rich and powerful in comparison with the other. Considering how small a share we have of the money of Europe, how much trade depends on money, it will not be found very practicable to better our condition, but by an addition to our money. Or if it is practicable without it, it is much more so with it. The bank will add little to the money, for its credit is voluntary and it depends on the quantity of money in the country, and though the bank had never failed, yet it could not have kept its credit much longer, because the quantity of money in Scotland is not sufficient to give a circulation to such a sum of notes as will pay the charges of the bank and the interest to the owners. 'Tis thought the proprietors of the bank designed to apply to the Parliament for further privileges, but as their design is not yet made public, I shall only say in general that if other privileges are to be given, then it is not the same bank, at least not on the same establishment it was. In either of these cases, every person should be allowed to share in it. When a bank established, every person may have a share upon the terms of the Act of Parliament, and he that offers first is preferred. Suppose upon the setting up of the bank, A, B, and C did not subscribe to it, because they thought the establishment not favorable enough. So long as they who did subscribe can support the bank upon the terms of the Act of Parliament, none will pretend to any share in it, unless the subscribers are pleased to sell. But if other privileges are given, A, B, and C, as any others of the country, may desire the books to be opened, that they be allowed to share in it. And any other set of men who offer the same security may at the same time be allowed to set up a bank with the same privileges. So every shire in Scotland will desire one, and if new privileges are given to this bank, it were hardship to refuse the same to others, who are able and willing to give the same security, especially when the nation stands in need of more money than this bank would be allowed to give out. End of section 7. Section 1 of Money and Trade Considered, with a proposal for supplying the nation with money. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Money and Trade Considered, with a proposal for supplying the nation with money, by John Law, in Chapter 1. Goods have a value from the uses they are applied to, and their value is greater or lesser, not so much from their more or less valuable or necessary uses, as from the greater or lesser quantity of them in proportion to the demand for them. Example, water is of great use, yet of little value, because the quantity of water is much greater than the demand for it. Diamonds are of little use, yet of great value, because the demand for diamonds is much greater than the quantity of them. Goods of the same kind differ in value from any difference in their quality. One horse is better than another horse. Barley of one country is better than barley of another country. Goods change their value from any change in their quantity or in the demand for them. If oats be in greater quantity than last year, and the demand the same or lesser, oats will be less valuable. Mr. Locke says the value of goods is according to their quantity in proportion to their event. The event of goods cannot be greater than the quantity, but the demand may be greater. If the quantity of wine bought from France be 100 tons, and the demand be for 500 tons, the demand is greater than the event, and the 100 tons will sell at a higher price than if the demand were only equal to the event. So the prices of goods are not according to the quantity in proportion to the event, but in proportion to the demand. Before the use of money was known, goods were exchanged by barter or contract, and contracts were made payable in goods. This state of barter was inconvenient and disadvantageous. First, he who desired to barter would not always find people who wanted the goods he had, and had such goods as he desired in exchange. Second, contracts taken payable in goods were uncertain, for goods of the same kind differed in value. Third, there was no measure by which the proportional value goods had to one another could be known. In this state of barter, there was little trade, and a few artsmen. The people depended on the landed men. The landed men labored only so much of the land as served the occasions of their families, to barter for such necessaries as their land did not produce, and to lay up for seed and bad years. What remained was unlabored, or gifted on condition of vassalage and other services. The losses of difficulties that attended barter would force the landed men to a greater consumption of the goods of their own product, and a lesser consumption of other goods. Or to supply themselves, they would turn the land to the product of the several goods they had occasion for, though only proper to produce of one kind. So much of the land was unlabored. What was labored was not employed to that by which it would have turned to most advantage, nor the people to the labor they were most fit for. Silver as metal had a value in barter, as other goods, from the uses it was then applied to. As goods of the same kind differed in value, so silver differed from silver, as it was more or less fine. Silver was liable to a change in its value, as other goods, from any change in its quantity or in the demand for it. Silver had qualities which fitted it for the use of money. First, it could be brought to a standard in fineness, so was certain as to its quality. Second, it was easy of delivery. Third, it was of the same value in one place that it was in another, or differed little, being easy of carriage. Fourth, it could be kept without loss or expense, and taking up little room, and being durable. Fifth, it could be divided without loss, an ounce in 4 pieces being equal in value to an ounce in 1 piece. Silver having these qualities, 'tis reasonable to think it was used as money before it was coined. What is meant by being used as money is that silver in bullion was the measure by which goods were valued, the value by which goods were exchanged, and in which contracts were made payable. He who had more goods than he had use for would choose to barter them for silver, though he had no use for it, because the silver was certain in its quality. It was easy of delivery, it could be kept without loss or expense, and with it he could purchase other goods as he had occasion, in whole or in part, at home or abroad, and silver being divisible without loss, and of the same value in different places. If AB had 100 sheep, and desired to exchange them for horses, CD had 10 horses, which were equal to or worth the 100 sheep, and was willing to exchange. But as AB had not present occasion for the horses, rather than be at the expense of keeping them, he would barter his sheep with EF, who had the value to give in silver, with which he could purchase the horses at the time he had occasion. Or if EF had not silver, but was satisfied to give his bond for the silver, or the horses, and payable at the time AB wanted them, AB would choose to take the bond payable in silver rather than in horses, because silver was certain in quality, and horses differed much. So silver was used as the value in which contracts were made payable. And silver was likewise used as the measure by which goods were valued, because certain in quality. If AB had 100 weight of lead, and desired to exchange it for barley, the way to know what quantity of barley was equal in value to the lead was by the silver. If the 100 weight of lead was equal to 5 ounces of fine silver, and 5 ounces fine silver equal to 20 bowls of barley, then 20 bowls was the quantity of barley to be given in exchange for the lead. Silver being easy of carriage, so equal in one place to what it was in another, was used as the measure by which goods to be delivered in different places were valued. If a piece of wine was to be delivered at Glasgow by AB merchant there, to the order of CD merchant in Aberdeen, and the value to be delivered in oats at Aberdeen by CD to the order of AB, the wine could not be valued by the quantity of oats it was worth at Glasgow, nor the oats by the quantity of wine they were worth at Aberdeen. Wine or oats might differ in quality, or be more or less valuable at the one place than at the other. The way to have known what the quantity of oats was equal to the wine was by the quantity of silver it was worth at the places they were to be delivered. If the piece of wine was worth at Glasgow 20 ounces of fine silver, and 20 ounces of fine silver worth 50 bowls of oats at Aberdeen, then 50 bowls was the quantity of oats to be given there in return for the wine. Silver being capable of a stamp, and princes, for the greater convenience of the people, set up mints to bring it to a standard, and stamp it, whereby its weight and fineness was known, without the trouble of weighing or fining. But the stamp added nothing to the value. For these reasons, silver was used as money. Its being coined was only a consequence of its being applied to that use in bullion, though not with the same convenience. Mr. Locke and others who have wrote on this subject say the general consent of men place an imaginary value upon silver because of its qualities fitting for money. I cannot conceive how different nations could agree to put an imaginary value upon anything, especially upon silver, by which all other goods are valued, or that any one country would receive that as value, which was not valuable equal to what it was given for, or how that imaginary value could have been kept up. But suppose France receiving silver at imaginary value, other nations received it at that value because received so in France. Then for the same reason, a crown passing in France for 76 sols should pass in Scotland for 76 pence, and in Holland for 76 stivers. But on the contrary, even in France where the crown is raised, 'tis worth no more than before when at 60 sols. It is reasonable to think silver was bartered as it was valued for its uses as metal, and was given the money according to its value in barter. The additional use of money silver was applied to would add to its value, because as money it remedied the disadvantages and inconveniences of barter, and consequently the demand for silver increasing, it received an additional value equal to the greater demand its use as money occasioned. And this additional value is no more imaginary than the value silver had in barter as metal, for such value was because it served such uses, and was greater or lesser according to the demand for silver as metal, proportionate to its quantity. The additional value silver received from being used as money was because of its qualities which fitted it for that use, and that value was according to the additional demand its use as money occasioned. If either of these values are imaginary, then all value is so, for no goods have any value but from the uses they are applied to, and according to the demand for them in proportion to their quantity. Thus, silver having value, and qualities fitting it for money, which other goods had not, was made money, and for the greater convenience of the people was coined. The names of the different pieces might have been number 1, number 2, and so on. Number 60 would have been the same as a crown, for the name and the stamp was only to certify that the piece had such a quantity of silver in it, of such a fineness. Goods of any other kind that have the same qualities might then and may now be made money equal to their value. Gold and copper may be made money, but neither with so much convenience as silver, and payments in copper be inconvenient by reason of its bulk, and gold not being in so great quantity as to serve the use of money. In countries where gold is in great quantity, it is used as money, and where gold and silver are scarce, and copper is used. Gold is coined for the more easy exchange of that metal, and copper to serve in small payments. But silver is the measure by which goods are valued, the value by which goods are exchanged, and in which contracts are made payable. As money increased, the disadvantages and inconveniences of barter were removed. The poor and idle were employed. More of the land was labored. The product increased. Manufactures and trade improved. The landed men lived better, and the people with less dependence on them. End of section 1. Section 12, Money and Trade Considered, by John Law. This LibreBook recording is in public domain. In Chapter 7, Part 2. The other qualities necessary in money are: first, easy of delivery; second, the same value in one place to what it is in another; and third, to be kept without loss or expense; fourth, to be divided without loss; fifth, to be capable of a stamp. Paper money has these qualities in a greater degree than silver. First, it is easy of delivery. £500 in paper may be paid in less time than £5 in silver. And second, it is nearer the value in one place to what it is in another, and being of easier carriage. And third, it can be easier kept and taken up less room, and without loss, because it may be exchanged at the office. Consumption of paper is not of so much value as the consumption of silver. The consumption of the paper is a loss to the office. The consumption of silver is a loss to the owner. And first, it can be divided without loss, because it may be changed for lesser notes at his office. And fifth, it is capable of a stamp, the less liable to be counterfeit. The practice of most trading nations confirms that the paper is more qualified for the use of money than silver, providing it has value. In Holland, silver is pledged, and the paper is used as money. That the land pledged is of better value than silver pledged is evident from what has been said. In England, before the bank was set up, goldsmiths' notes were received in payments preferable to gold or silver, which shows that the paper money had all the qualities necessary in money, so much more than gold or silver, as to equal the danger of goldsmiths' breaking, of which there were many examples. Mr. Locke, page 7 on Interest of Money, says that one goldsmith's credit, being usually a note under one of his servants' hands, went for above £1,100,000 at a time. The note of the Bank of Scotland went, though there was no money in the bank, though the acceptance was voluntary. The security for the paper proposed will be as good. The administration may be more safe and satisfactory than that bank, or any other private bank. Because it is more public, the Commission has not any share of the profits. Besides, it will not be liable to the heights that banks are liable to, from the sale of shares. And it seems strange that the administration of such a commission should be doubted, when the Parliament has the nomination of the managers, when the managers are to be accountable to the Parliament, when the trust to be so small, for more notes cannot be coined so long as £25,000 is in office. A committee of Parliament is to be appointed to inspect the management, and the books are to be open to the inspection of any member of Parliament. The state of the commission is to be published in print. Since the notes of the bank went upon a voluntary acceptance, and though there was no money in bank, it is reasonable to think the paper money proposed would at least have the same currency. Being counted by law does not make it less valuable. He who took banknotes could not be sure the bank would be in a condition to give money for them, and the person he was to pay money to might refuse them, so he was more uncertain than if they had been counted by law. The silver money being to fall betwixt 8 and 9% in 3 months, it is not to be supposed that silver be preferred to paper money, since the notes of the bank, of which is paper upon the same fund, invented the ordinary interest. And though the receiver was not certain of the money at the time it was promised, or that the person he was owing to would receive it, it may be objected that the paper went because silver could be got for it when demanded, or at a certain time. That was very reasonable, but it would not be so in this case. The security pledged for that paper money was silver. The security pledged for this paper money is land. This money has no relation to gold or silver more than to other goods, and it were more extravagant to say, I won't take £100 of such paper money for the goods I sell, because I am not sure if 6 months hence it will buy me such a quantity of silver, for silver may grow dearer, as it would be to say now, I won't take £100 in silver for the goods I sell, because I am not sure if 6 months hence it will buy me such a quantity of wine, for wine may grow dearer. 4 crowns formed by a guinea, though they were coined for the same value, were not owned by the 10th part of goods 4 crowns bought 200 years ago. Yet the silver is received as value, and contracted for, though its value lessens every year, and though it is not perhaps worth above a third of what it is given or contracted for, abstract from the use of money. And this paper proposed will not only keep its value, the increase of the quantity depending on the demand, and the quantity decreasing as the demand decreases, but likewise the land pledged is as valuable as the paper given out, abstract from its use as money, and increases in value. The objection may be made against silver money, and with good reason, for it falls faster in its value than other goods, and may soon be reduced to its value as metal. The paper money proposed is equal to itself, but to continue equal to such quantity of any other goods, it is to have a quality that no goods can have, but that depends on the changes in these other goods. has a better and a more certain value than silver money, and all the other qualities necessary in money in a much greater degree, with other qualities that the silver has not. It is more capable of being made money than anything yet known. Land is what is most valuable, and what increases in value more than other goods. So the paper money issued from it will in all appearance not only keep equal to other goods, but rise above them. Because of the extraordinary scarcity of silver in Scotland, and the inclination people have to it, from its having been long used as money, it may be necessary to restrict its price to 5 shillings and 2 pence the ounce. And it was so far from that value of paper, if it had come in greater quantity into Europe, and thence exported or consumed. And suppose an island belonging to one man, the number of tenants 100, each tenant 10 in family, in all 1,000. By this the island is labored, part to the product of corns, the rest for pasturage. Besides the tenants and their families, there are 300 poor or idle, who live by charity. There is no money, but the rents are paid in kind. And if one tenant has more of one product, and less of another than his family has occasion for, he barters with his neighbor. The people of this island know nothing of the manufacture. The island being plentiful furnishes enough for their consumption, and overflows which they exchange on the continent for clothes and for the other goods they want. So the overplus is only sufficient to make a return of such a quantity of goods as they consume yearly, so they have no magazines of their own or foreign goods to serve them in bad years, and no magazines of arms, ammunition, etc. for their defense. 'Tis proposed to the proprietor that if money was established to pay the wages of labor, the 300 poor might be employed in manufacturing such goods as before were exported in product. And if 1,000 that labor the ground were idle 1/2 of their time, they might be employed so that their additional labor would be equal to that of 500 more, which would lessen their import by providing them with part of such goods as before they brought from the continent, and raise the export to 3 or 4 times the value it had, the return of which would furnish them with greater quantities of foreign goods than they wanted for consumption, which might be laid up in magazines. The money proposes after this manner: the proprietor to coin pieces of paper figured number 1, number 2, and so on, number 4 to be equal to a certain measure of corn. The poor and other laborers would be satisfied to take a number 4 for the wages of a day's labor, providing it be so contrived that number 4 purchase them the measure of corn, for that corn can be bartered with other goods, so number 4 would purchase an equal value of any other goods. To make number 4 equal to that measure of corn, the proprietor calls his tenants together, tells them for the future he will have his rent paid in paper, so renews their leaves. And if 100 measures of corn was paid, they obliged themselves to pay him number 400. The other kinds the proprietor was paid in are valued, according to the value they had in barter with corn, the leaves made for paper. The proprietor coins paper to the value of a year's rent, employs such as are willing to work, and gives them paper money as the price of their labor. The tenant gives corn or any other goods he has to the laborers for paper money, and the proprietor receives it for his rent. But as the consumption of the laboring man may be supposed to be only equal to number 2, so the tenants cannot get the whole sum issued by the proprietor, and consequently not enough to pay their rent. If this were not remedied, the laboring men, being masters of the remaining part of the paper, and having no occasion for more goods from the tenants, might raise the value of the paper. To prevent this, the proprietor calls a greater quantity, which brings a part of the poor and idle of the continent to the island, and occasions a greater consumption, whereby the tenants are able to pay their rent in paper as contracted for. The addition to the people is an advantage to the island, for it adds to the power of the island, and their labor is worth double what they consume. And this money, though it has no value but what the proprietor gives it, by receiving it in payments of his rent, yet it will be esteemed equal to the product paid before. If the proprietor would give it value in land, computing after this manner, an acre of land pays number 100, at 20 years' purchase worth number 2,000, and disposed the property of land for paper at that value, who would not be satisfied to receive a contract for that money, since it not only bought the product, but the property of land at a reasonable price? Money is not the value for which goods are exchanged, but the value by which they are exchanged. The use of money is to buy goods, and silver, while money, is of no other use. Though silver were our product, yet it is not so proper to be made money as land. Land is what produces everything, silver is only the product. Land does not increase or decrease in quantity, and silver or any other product may. So land is more certain its value than silver or any other goods. Land is capable of improvement, and the demand for it may be greater, so it may be more valuable, and silver cannot be supposed to be applied to any other uses than it is now applied to, or that the demand will increase more than the quantity. Land cannot lose any of its uses, so will not be less valuable, and silver may lose the use of money it is now applied to, so be reduced to its value as metal. It may likewise lose part of its uses as metal, and these uses being supplied by other goods, so loses a part of its value as metal, but nothing can supply the uses for land. Land may be conveyed by paper, and thereby has the other qualities necessary in money, in a greater degree than silver. Land has other qualities fitting it for the use of money that the silver has not. Land applied to the use of money does not lose any of the other uses it is applied to, and silver cannot serve the use of money and any of its other uses as metal. And trade and money depend mutually on one another. When trade decays, money lessens, and when money lessens, and trade decays. Power and wealth consist in numbers of people, the magazines of home and foreign goods, and these depend on trade, and trade on money. So while trade and money may be effected directly and consequentially, that which is hurtful to either must be so to both, and power and wealth will be precarious. If money is established that has no intrinsic value, and its extrinsic value to be such as it will not be exported, nor will not be less than the demand for it within the country, wealth and power will be attained, and will be less precarious. Money not being liable to be lessened directly, nor consequentially, and the trade not liable to decay consequentially, so the power and wealth of that country will only be precarious from what may be directly hurtful to trade. The paper money proposed being always equal in quantity to the demand, the people will be employed, the country improved, manufacture advanced, and trade domestic and foreign will be carried on, and the wealth and power attained, and not being liable to be exported, the people will not be set idle, etc., and the wealth and power will be less precarious. End of section 12. Section 2 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2, Part 1. Trade is domestic or foreign. Domestic trade is the employment of the people and the exchange of goods within the country. Foreign trade has several branches. First, the product and manufacture being more than the consumption, a part is exported, and in return, foreign goods are brought home. And second, selling the goods exported at one port and loading there to sell another, whereby a greater return is made than if the goods exported had been carried directly there. Third, bringing home the product and manufacture of other countries from whence and when they are cheap, to supply countries where and when they are dear. Fourth, bringing home the product of other countries and exporting it in manufacture. Fifth, freighting or hiring out ships. And domestic and foreign trade may be carried on by barter, but not for so great a value as by money, nor with so much convenience. Domestic trade depends on money. A greater quantity employs more people than a lesser quantity. A limited sum can only set a number of people to work proportionate to it, and it is with little success laws are made for employing the poor or idle in countries where money is scarce. Good laws may bring the money to the full circulation it is capable of, and force it to those employments that are most profitable to the country. But no laws can make it go further, nor can more people be set to work without more money to circulate so as to pay the wages of a greater number. They may be brought to work on credit, and that is not practicable unless the credit have a circulation, so as to supply the workmen with the necessaries. If that is supposed, then that credit is money, and will have the same effects on home and foreign trade. In addition to the money adds to the value of the country, so long as money gives interest, it is employed. And the money employed brings profit, though the employer loses. If 50 men are set to work to whom 25 shillings is paid per day, and the improvement made by their labor be only equal to or worth 15 shillings, yet by so much the value of the country is increased. But as it is reasonable to suppose their labor equal to 40 shillings, so much is added to the value of the country, of which the employer gains 15 shillings. 15 may be supposed to equal the consumption of the laborers, who before lived on charity, and 10 shillings remains to them over their consumption. If a stone of wool is worth 10 shillings, and a knitted cloth worth 2 pounds, the product is improved to 4 times the value it had in wool. The workmen may be supposed to consume more than when they were not employed. Allow 1/4, the nation is again double the value of the product. So in addition to the money, whether the employer gains or not, adds to the national wealth, eases the country of a number of poor or idle, proportion to the money added, enables them to live better and to bear a share in the public with the other people. The first branch of foreign trade, which is the export-import of goods, depends on the money. If 1/2 the people are employed and the whole product manufactured consumed, more money, by employing more people, will make an overplus to export. If then the goods imported balance the goods exported, a great addition to the money will employ yet more people, or the same people before employed to more advantage, which by making a greater or more valuable export will make a balance due. So if the money lessens, a part of the people then employed are set idle, or employed to less advantage. The product manufactured is less, or less valuable, the export of consequence less, and the balance due to foreigners. The second and third branches of foreign trade, called the trades of carriage, are monopolized out of Europe by these countries who have colonies, and in Europe by these who sell cheapest. Scotland has advantages for trade by which the merchants might undersell merchants in Holland, as cheapness of living, paying less to the public, having workmen, seamen, and provisions for victualling cheaper. But if the Dutch merchant's stock is £10,000, and his yearly expense 500, he can trade at a 10% profit and add yearly £500 to his stock, whereas the goods merchant, whose stock is £500 and his yearly expense £50, cannot trade so cheap. If it is asked how a Dutch merchant trades who has only £500 stock, he restricts his expense so as he can afford to trade at a 10% profit. Or money being in greater quantity in Holland, whereby it is easier borrowed and at less use, he gets credit for more at 3 or 4%, by which he gains 6 or 7. And unless money be in greater quantity in Scotland, or expense retrenched, we cannot trade so cheap as the Dutch, though we have advantages for trade that they have not, and though they be under disadvantages we are not liable to. By a greater quantity of money and economy, the Dutch monopolize the trades of carriage even from the English. The first branch of foreign trade, bringing home the product of other countries and exporting it in manufacture, depends on the quantity of money. We are so far from competing with the Dutch in this trade that our wool was sent to Holland and imported from thence in manufacture, under the difficulty of prohibition on the export of the wool and on the import of the manufacture. Yet besides the advantages already named which we have for trade over the Dutch, the material is the product of our country, and greater privileges are granted to the manufacturers here than in Holland. 'Tis alleged, if the prohibition had continued, manufactures might have come to perfection. The advantage some men made by manufacture may have occasioned the setting up of more, while the money has been diminishing. But that money so employed has been taken from some other use it was before employed in. For money cannot serve in two places at one time. 'Tis alleged that the allowing the wool to be exported occasioned the exportation of the money. That at one time £5,000 was sent to England to buy wool. 'Tis asked what became of that wool. The answer, it was sent to France for wine. Then, as £5,000 of English wool may be worth £8,000 or £10,000 in France, so the £5,000 sent to England saved the sending out of £8,000 or £10,000 to France. To these who don't fully examine the state of this country, it may seem odd that wool should be allowed by law to be exported. But if the product of Scotland cannot be manufactured with less than 50,000 people, and the money that can be spared to manufacture be only capable to employ 25,000, one half the product will be lost if it is not allowed to be exported. The first branch, the freighting or hiring out ships, depends on the money, and the other branches of trade, where ships are in use to be freighted by strangers and supported by a great demand for their own trade. There all sorts of ships are to be hired cheaper than in other places, and the merchants are sure of such ships as are proper for the goods they load with, and the countries they trade to. This trade of freighting brings the goods of other countries to Holland, though designed for sale elsewhere. If wool manufactured from England to Portugal yields 25% profit, and to Holland 15%, the English merchant will choose to send such goods to Holland 15% rather than to Portugal for 25%. And the Dutch merchant who is able to trade cheaper from the cheapness of freight, etc., is satisfied for the other 10 to carry to Portugal. Most authors who have wrote on trade divide it into national and private. They say a merchant may gain where the nation loses. If £1,000 is exported to the Indies in money or bullion, and £1,000 in goods or provisions, the return was £8,000. The merchant gains 6,000. But as these goods are all consumed in the country, the nation loses the £1,000 money or bullion exported. They don't consider whether the 8,000 pounds of goods imported or supposed to be consumed in the country does not lessen the consumption of the product or manufacture of the country, so as to occasion an addition to the export, at least equal to the 1,000 pounds of money or bullion exported. But allowing they do not lessen the consumption of the goods of the country, and the use of them be not at all necessary, yet these goods being worth 8,000 pounds at home or abroad, the nation gains 6,000. If the people consume them in extravagant uses, that's not the fault of the trade, nor for that reason should that trade be called disadvantageous. It is the fault of the government, who ought to hinder the too great consumption of foreign goods, especially such as might be wanted without causing great consumption of the goods of the country. That care being taken, by making the vent less profitable at home than abroad, the merchants would export them, or for the future lessen the import. If East India goods that sell for 1,000 pounds in England are only worth abroad 800 pounds, the duty paid at their entry being returned, and more given as drawback to encourage the export, their vent abroad will be more profitable than in England. A people may consume more of their own or foreign goods than the value of the product manufactured and profits by trade. But their trade is not disadvantageous. It is that your great consumption, and that your great consumption of the product and manufacture of the country may be as hurtful as that of foreign goods. For if so much is consumed that the remainder exported won't pay the consumption of foreign goods, a balance will be due, and that balance will be sent out in money or bullion. End of section 2. Section 11 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This liberal recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7, Part 1. To supply the nation with money, it is humbly proposed that 40 commissioners be appointed by Parliament, answerable to Parliament for their administration, and the administration of the officers under them. The nomination of these officers being left to the commissioners. That the commissioners have power to coin notes, which notes to be received in payments were offered. That the committee of Parliament be appointed to inspect the management, that the number of the commissioners be members. That the commission and committee meet twice a year at Whitsunday and Martinmas, their meetings to begin 10 days before, to continue 10 days after each term. There are 3 ways humbly offered to the Parliament for giving out these notes. They in their wisdom may determine which will be most safe. First, to authorize the Commission to lend notes on land security, the debt not exceeding 1/2 or 2/3 of the value, and it is the ordinary interest. Second, to give out the full price of land, as it is valued, 20 years' purchase more or less, according to what it would have given in civil money, the Commission entering into possession of such lands, by what said granted to the Commission or assignments, and redeemable betwixt and the expiring of a term of years. Third, to give the full price of land, upon sale made of such lands, and disposed to the Commission or assignments irredeemably. That any person shall have such bonds, waterseds, or estates assigned or disposed to them, upon paying in the value to the Commission. That the Commission don't receive other money than these notes. That no person who has contracted for these notes shall be obliged to receive silver or metal money. That the Commission have not power to coin more than 50,000 pounds at a time. That no more be coined so long as there is 25,000 pounds remaining in the office. That for a year and a half the Commission be limited to a certain sum, After that time, her power to coin what sums are demanded, unless restricted by ensuing parliaments. That is, these who desire to have money from the commission give in a note to the lawyers for the commission a month before the term of what sums they want, with the rights of the land they offer in pledge, and that these who have notes to pay in to the commission give warning 10 days before the term. That the state of the commission, the sum of the notes coined, the date and credit, with the highest number of the different notes, be published every term. That any person who shall discover 2 notes of the same number, or of a higher number than is published, he shall have £100 reward. That the end officers be entrusted with a sum of £20,000 to change notes with, and that they attend the whole year. That any member of Parliament may inspect the state of the commission. That no notes be coined, money lent, or rights assigned by the commission, but it is the terms of Whit Sunday the Martimas, and in presence of at least 20 commissioners, and 1/3 of the committee. That the revenue of the commission, or what pays the charges, and what part of the Parliament thinks needful to make good any losses may happen to the commission, be applied by way of drawback for encouraging the export and the manufacture of the nation. That paper money do not rise more than 10% above silver money, so that he who contracts to pay in paper may know what he is to pay in case he cannot get paper money. The Parliament may enter into a resolve that at the next sessions of this or the next ensuing Parliament, the state of the Commission be taken into consideration, preferable to all other business, and if found hurtful to the country, the Parliament may discharge any more notes to be given out, and order what notes are then out to be called in. That after 3 months from the date of the Act, Scots and foreign money be reduced to the English standard, the English crown to 60p, and the other money in proportion to its value of silver, the 40p to 38p, the new mark to 13p and 1/12, the old mark to its weight, the ducats to 68p, dollars to their weight, guineas not to pass 22 shillings. That after 4 months, no Scots money, except what shall be coined after the Act, nor any foreign money except the English money, be received in any payments, or be sold as bullion but at the mint. That for what old money or bullion is brought to the mint return to the full value in new money of 12p, 6p, and 3p pieces, of 11 deniers fine, the 12p of 3 drops 3 grains weight, the other pieces to weigh in proportion, the expense of coinage to be paid out of the funds appropriated to that use. That for 3 months after the Act, the new money passed for 13p, 6p halfpenny, and 3p a quarter. That after 3 months, bullion and road plate be of 11 deniers fine, and 5 shillings and 2 penny the ounce of silver, gold not to pass £4. The paper money proposed will be equal in value to silver, for it will have a value of land pledged equal to the same sum of silver money that it is given out for. If any losses should happen, 1/4 of the revenue of the commission will in all appearance be more than sufficient to make them good. This paper money will not fall in value as silver money has fallen, or may fall. Goods or money fall in value if the increase in quantity or if the demand lessens. But the commission giving out what sums are demanded, and taking back what sums are offered to be returned. This paper money will be keep its value, and there will always be as much money as there is occasion or employment for, and no more. If a contract for paper money could be satisfied by paying the same quantity of silver money, then that paper money could not rise above the value of silver, and would fall with it. But as the paper money is a different species from silver, so it will not be liable to any of the changes that silver money is liable to. Though the Parliament could give silver money to the people in as great a quantity as there were occasion, the Parliament could not justly know what the sum would serve the country, for the demand changes. If the quantity of money is less than the demand, the land demand is wronged. For £100 then being more valuable, we buy a greater quantity of the land demand's goods. If the quantity of money is greater than the demand, the money demand is wronged. For £100 then is not so valuable, so we not buy the same quantity of goods £100 bought before. If the Commission do not give out the money when it is demanded, where good security is offered, 'tis a hardship on the person who is refused, and a loss to the country. For few, if any, borrow money to keep by them, and if employed, it brings a profit to the nation, though the employer loses. If the Commission did not take back what sums were offered to be returned, it were a hardship on the moneyed man, who has a sum paid him, and does not know how to employ it, and the quantity being greater than the demand for it, would fall in value. After the method proposed, the quantity being always equal to the demand for it, it will keep its value, and buy the same quantity of goods 50 years hence as now, unless the goods alter in their value from any change in their quantity or in the demand for them. Suppose this commission had been established 200 years ago, land then at 14 years purchase, money at 10%, victual at 8 shillings and 4 pence the trader, and paper money to have been given out upon land. 8 shillings and 4 pence of that paper money will now have been equal to a trader victual, and to £8 6 shillings and 4 pence silver money. Because silver money have increased in quantity more than the demand, and having been altered in the denomination, has fallen to 1/20th of the value it had then. Nor would the landed man have received less for his victual than now, for that paper money would have bought him 20 times the quantity of goods as silver money will buy. Land has a more certain value than other goods, for it does not increase in quantity, or other goods may. The uses of goods may be discharged, or by custom be taken from them, and given to other goods. The use of bread may be taken from oats, and wholly given to wheat. The use of money may be taken from silver, and given to land. The use of plate and the other uses of silver as metal may be taken from silver and given to some other metal, or some mixture that may be more fitted for these uses. In any of these cases, these goods lose part of their value, proportion to the uses are taken from them, but the land cannot lose any of its uses, for as everything is produced by land, so the land must keep its value, because it can be turned to produce the goods that are in use. If wheat is more used, and oats less, as the land can produce both, it will be turned to produce what is most used, because most valuable. This money will not receive any additional value from being used as money, so the receiver will be certain he can be no loser, though after a term of years the use of money is taken from it. The land will receive an additional value from being used as the pledge upon which the money is issued, and that additional value would be greater than what the silver received, because the land be used as a pledge to issue out money upon, yet none of its other uses would be taken from it. Silver cannot be used as money and paid at the same time. But as the land is in greater quantity than there will be occasion for to give out money upon, so the additional value it receives will not be near so great as that the silver money has received. Suppose the additional value of land received for 1/4. The land now at a 20 years purchase would then be at a 25 years purchase. If the Parliament called in the paper money, he who had the paper money could be no loser by it, though the land lost the additional value, for no more of it is given out than the value of the land abstracted from its use as money. Whereas if silver was no more used as money, he who had a silver would lose a half, or 2/3, and silver falling then to its value as metal. So that this paper money proposed, having a better value than silver, and receiving no addition to its value from being used as money, and not being liable to any change in its value, the quantity and the demand increasing and decreasing together. It is so far more qualified to be the measure by which goods are valued, the value by which goods are exchanged, and in which contracts are made payable. End of Section 11. Section 6 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4, Part 1. When I use the words raising the money, I desire to be understood raising it in the denomination, for I do not suppose it adds to the value. There is no way silver can be made more valuable but by lessening the quantity or increasing the demand for it. If the export and consumption of silver be greater than the import, or the demand be increased, then silver will be of more value. If the quantity imported be greater than the quantity exported or consumed, or the demand lessened, silver will be of less value. If raising or laying the money could add to its value or have any good effect on home or foreign trade, then no nation would want money. £100 might be raised or laid to 2, to 10, to 100 times the denomination it had, or more as there were occasion. But it is unjust to raise or lay money, because then all contracts are paid with a lesser value than was contracted for, and as it has bad effects on home or foreign trade, so no nation practices it that has regard to justice, or understands the nature of trade and money. If A.B. sell 12 children of victual for £100 payable in 6 months, with which he is to pay bills of exchange of that value, to be drawn on him then from France for one he has commissioned, and in that time the money is raised or allayed to double, the £100 A.B. receives will only pay half the bill he has to pay, being only equal to £50 of the money he contracted for, nor will that £100 buy the same quantity of goods of the country that £100 bought before. It will pay where money is due, and satisfy past contracts made upon the face of the public, because the prince says every man shall take half what is owing him in full payment. But in bargains to be made, the value of the money will be considered, and goods will rise, though perhaps not to the proportion the money is raised, and such persons as do not raise their goods equal to the money are imposed on. When 6 pence is raised to 12 pence, the 6 pence is worth 12 pence, but the value of the pence is lowered to half pence. To explain this matter better, I shall suppose when money is raised, goods rise, or not. If goods rise, then raising the money has not the effect designed. If a piece of serge is sold for 40 shillings, and the shilling be raised to 18 pence, the piece of serge will be sold for £3. This adds to the tale of the money, and pays debts with 2/3 of what is due, but does not add to the money, and this is the natural consequence of raising the money, for it is not the sound of the higher denomination, but the value of the silver is considered. If, when money is raised, goods keep the prices they had before, then all goods exported are sold for lesser value abroad, and all goods imported are sold dearer. A half-crown is raised to 40 pence, and that half-crown buys the same quantity of goods 40 pence bought before. Then the merchant who sends goods to Holland to the value of £300, which are sold for £390 there, would gain £220 on the value of £300 exported, because £390 in Holland would be equal to, or worth by exchange it as a par or sent in bullion, £520 in Scotland. That trade would bring no more profit to the nation than when the return of the goods yielded only £390, for £390 before it was raised had the same quantity of silver that the £520 raised money would have, and bought a greater quantity of foreign goods. But that trade would be so profitable to the merchant that more people would deal in it than could get goods to buy, and the small buyers than sellers would raise the prices here, so one merchant underselling the other would lower the prices in Holland. But though the prices kept low here, and our merchants kept up the prices abroad, the Dutch, knowing the goods were so cheap in the country, would buy none from our merchants, but commission them in return of goods they sent. Suppose the yearly export first cost £300,000, and sold abroad £390,000. The import and expense abroad £410,000, and £20,000 sent in money to pay the balance. The money raised 1/3, and the goods to keep the prices they had before. £225,000 sent to Scotland in foreign money, or goods, or by exchange, would buy what was sold abroad for £390,000. The export, import, and expense abroad continuing the same, Scotland would be due a balance of £185,000. For though Scots goods were sold under the value, yet other nations would not sell their goods for less than before, or than they could have in other places. It may be alleged we have more product in manufacture than is consumed or exported, and selling cheaper would occasion greater demand for our goods abroad. The product and manufacture might be much increased if we had money to employ the people, but I am of opinion we have not any great quantity of goods, more than what is consumed or exported. Allow selling cheaper would occasion greater demand, that is, greater demand would occasion an increase in the product and the manufacture to the value of £100,000. Allow that the extraordinary cheapness of goods did not occasion greater consumption in the country, yet we would be in the same condition as before. £20,000 would be still due of balance, and the improvement would be given to foreigners for nothing. But this improvement is imaginary, for though the demand increased, yet without more money, more people could not be employed, so no further improvement could be made. We would be forced to return to near one half of the ordinary consumption of foreign goods and expense abroad, not have money to pay the great balance would be due. Some think foreign money being raised would bring in money to Scotland. Though the crown were raised to 10 shillings, yet if the balance due by Scotland, the exchange will be above the par, and it is not to be supposed an English merchant will bring crowns to Scotland when for 100 paid in at London he can have 105 or 6 of the same crowns paid him at Edinburgh. If the balance of trade was equal, foreign money raised, and Scots money not raised in proportion, foreign money would be brought in, and a greater value of Scots money would be carried out. 'Tis the same loss to a country where money is raised, and goods do not rise in proportion. If foreigners send in money to buy goods, and this money when exported is not valued so high as here, the return in goods will be so much less, besides the want of the profit we would have had on the export of our goods. If all import and foreign expense were discharged, Scotland would then be so much richer as there was bullion or money imported. But if that prohibition be supposed, Scotland would be richer by keeping the money at the value it has, because a greater quantity would be brought in to buy the same quantity of goods. If it could be supposed to be without any commerce with other nations, £100 may be allayed and raised to have the same effect in trade as £1,000,000. But if a stranger was suffered to come to Scotland, he might purchase a greater part of the land or goods with a small sum, and the rich man here would make a very small figure abroad. Money is a measure by which all goods are valued, and unless goods rise to the full proportion the money is raised, the goods are undervalued. If the yearly value of Scotland in product and manufacture be 2 millions, at 20 years' purchase 40 millions, the money £100,000, raising the money 20% makes it pass for £120,000. Suppose the goods rise only 10%, then that £120,000 is equal in Scotland to £110,000 of the money before it was raised, and buys the same quantity of goods. So an addition is made of £20,000 to the tale, and of £10,000 to the value of Scots or foreign money, compared with the value of Scots goods. But the measure by which goods are valued being raised in the denomination 20%, and the goods rising only 10%, Scotland is near 4 million or 1/10 less valuable than before, and any man who sells his estate will receive 1/10 less silver or of any other foreign goods for it than if he had sold it before the money was raised. France and Holland are given as examples of raising and laying the money. In France, the money is higher in the denomination than in other countries, but that does not hinder the money of France to be exported. When the louis d'or was at 12 livres, the balance was against France, exchanged 10% above the par, and 110 louis d'or at 12 livres were paid then at Paris, for 100 louis d'or of the same weight of fineness at Amsterdam, and passed there for 9 guilders bank money. So 10% was got by exporting money from France. When the louis d'or was raised to 14 livres, that did not make the balance against France less. The exchange continued the same. 110 louis d'or, though, at 14 livres, were paid for a bill of 100 at Amsterdam, and the same profit was made by exporting money. If the exchange happened to be lower, it was from the balance of the trade due by France being less, and that would have lowered the exchange whether the money had been raised or not. But the raising the money, so far from bringing the balance to the French side, and keeps the balance against France, for as the goods do not rise to the full proportion the money is raised, so French goods are sold cheaper, and foreign goods are sold dearer, which makes the balance greater, occasions greater export of money, sets idle so many of the people as that money employed, lessens the product or manufacture, the yearly value of the country, and the number of the people. 'Tis thought that Dutch coin louis d'or and sent them to France, where they pass at 14 livres, and that guineas were sent from Holland to England in the time of the clipped money, because they passed there for 30 shillings. But these people are misinformed. Ever since I have known anything of exchange, a louis d'or at Amsterdam, whether new or old, has been of more value by exchange than a new louis d'or at Paris. And in the time of the clipped money, a guinea in Holland was worth more by exchange than a guinea in England. These who were ignorant of the exchange might buy up guineas or louis d'ors to carry to England or France, but they would have got more by bill. There was a profit then upon exporting guineas and louis from England and France to Holland. The pound English at that time was given for 8 guilders, or under, and the exchange from Amsterdam to Paris has been these 8 or 10 years for the most part considerably above the par on the Dutch side. I have known the pound English at 7 guilders 13 stivers, and the French crown of 3 livres bought in Holland for 37 stivers, in London for 39 pence halfpenny. End of section 6. Section 9 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5, Part 2. In France, it has been observed that about 200 years ago, the same land was in 30 years worth double the money it was worth before. So land worth £100 anno 1500 was worth £200 anno 1530, £400 anno 1560, and so on, till within these 50 or 60 years it has continued near the same value. In England, 20 times the quantity of money is given for goods that was given 200 years ago. In these countries, it is thought goods have rose, but the goods have kept their value. This money has fallen. Most goods have increased in quantity equal or near as the demand for them has increased, and are at or near the value they had 200 years ago. Land is more valuable, by improvement producing to a greater value, and the demand increasing, the quantity being the same. And silver and money are of lesser value, being more increased in quantity than in demand. Goods will continue equal in quantity they are now to the demand, or won't differ much, for the increase of most goods depends on the demand. If the quantity will always be greater than the demand for consumption in magazines, what is always a drag, so that the product will be lessened, and the land employed for some other use. If by scarcity the quantity be lesser than the demand, that demand will be supplied from magazines of former years. Or if the magazines are not sufficient to answer the demand, that scarcity cannot well be supposed to last above a year or 2. Land will continue to rise in value, being yet capable of improvement, and as the demand increases, for the quantity will be the same. And silver will continue to fall in value as it increases in quantity, the demand not increasing in proportion, for the increase does not depend on the demand. And most people won't allow themselves to think that the silver is cheaper or less valuable, though it appears plainly by comparing what the quantity of goods such a weight of fine silver bought 200 years ago, and what the quantity of the same goods it will buy now. If a piece of wine in France equal in value to 20 bills of oats there, that quantity of oats can never be worth more or less wine, so long as the quality, quantity, and the demand of both continues the same. But any disproportionate change in their quality, quantity, or demand will make the same quantity of the one be equal to a greater quantity of the other. So if a piece of wine in France equal to or worth 40 crowns there, and it will always continue so, unless some disproportionate change happen in the quantity, quality, or demand of the wine or of the money. The reason is plain why silver has increased more in quantity than in demand. The Spaniards bring us great quantities into Europe as they can get wood out of the mines, for it is still valued, though not so high, and so now for it come into Britain, yet it will be of less value in Britain as it is in greater quantity in Europe. It may be objected that demand for silver is now greater than the quantity. It is answered, though the demand is greater than the quantity, it has not increased in proportion with the quantity. 200 years ago, money of silver was at 10%, now from 6 to 3. If the demand had increased as much as the quantity, money would give 10% then, and be equal to the same quantity of victual or other goods that have kept their value. If A.B. had £1,000 to lend, should offer it at 10% interest, and desired the land of 240 trotted of victuals rent for his security, as was used to be given 200 years ago. So no law regulates the interest of money, A.B. would find no borrowers on these conditions, because silver had increased more in quantity than in demand, and the denomination being ordered, monies of less value, and is to be had on easier terms. If the demand had increased in the same proportion with the quantity, and the money had not been raised, the same interest would be given now as then, and the same quantity of victual to pay the interest. For money keeping its value, 8 shillings and 4 would be equal to a quarter of victual as it was then. If £2,000 was laid out on plate 200 years ago, they saw that the loss on the plate was only the fashion and the interest. But if the £2,000 had been laid out on land, the rent of that land would be more than the value of that plate. Though money or silver is so much fallen from the value it had, yet it is given its value for 1/2 or 2/3 more than its value of silver, abstract from its use as money. Suppose silver to be no more used as money in Europe, its quantity would be the same, and the demand for it much lesser, which might lower it 2/3 or more, for besides that the demand would be less, its uses as plate, etc., are not near so necessary as that of money. Goods given its value ought for their other uses to be valuable, equal to what they are given for. And silver was bartered as it was valued for its uses as metal, and it was at first given as money, according to the value it had in barter. And silver has acquired an additional value since. That additional use it was applied to, occasioning a greater demand for it, which value people have not been sensible of, the greater quantity making it for more, but it has kept it from falling so low it would have fallen if it had not been used as money, and the same quantity had come into Europe. 'Tis uncertain how long silver may keep that additional value. If England set up money of another kind, and silver will not fall to 1/3, because used in other places as money, but the lesser demand, besides the ordinary fall from the greater quantity coming into Europe, would occasion an extraordinary fall, perhaps of 10%. If the new money then in England did not increase beyond the demand for it, and if it keep its value, and be equal to so much more silver at home or abroad than it was coined for, a silver would be of less value from the ordinary and extraordinary fall. If England changed their money, other countries may do the same. If Holland alone kept to silver money, the price of silver may be supposed to fall immediately 50%, from the lesser demand for it as money. The £100 in Holland be worth no more than £50 new money in England, whether sent in specie or remitted by exchange. And as more silver came into Europe, it would fall yet lower, because of its greater quantity. It may be projected that in Scotland its quantity of goods are proportional to the demand as they have been some years ago. The money is scarcer, the demand for it the same or greater. So if goods and money are higher or lower in value from their greater or lesser quantity in proportion to the demand for them, money should by its great scarcity be more valuable and equal to a greater quantity of goods. Yet goods differ little in price from what they were when money was in greater quantity. To this is answered, the value of goods or money differs, and the quantity of them or demand for them changes in Europe, not as they change in any particular country. And goods in Scotland are at or near the same value with goods in England, being near the same in quantity in proportion to the demand as there. Money in Scotland is not above 1/40th part of the money in England, proportion to the people, land, or product, nor above 1/10th part proportion to the demand. If Scotland was incapable of any commerce with other countries, in the state it is now, money here would buy 10 times the quantity of goods it does in England, or more. But as Scotland has commerce with other countries, though money were much scarcer than now, or in much greater quantity than in England, if there were but £10,000 in Scotland, or 1,000,000, the value of goods would not differ above 30% from what they were abroad, because for that difference goods may be exported or imported. Prohibitions may raise the difference higher. Britannia language and others on trade money of opinion that the goods in any country fall in value as money in that particular country grows scarcer. That if there was no more than £500 in England, the yearly rent of England would not exceed £500, and an ox would be sold for a penny, which opinion is wrong. For as the ox might be exported to Holland, it would give a price in England equal or near to that it would give in Holland. If money was supposed to be equally scarce in Holland and other places as in England, the ox might give no more than a penny, but that penny would have a value then equal to £5 now, because it would purchase the same quantity of goods in England or other places that a £5 does now. The same answer may be given to these who think in addition to the money of any particular country would undervalue it so that the same quantity of goods would cost double the money as before. If the money in the credit account in England be 15 millions, Scotland reckoned as 1 to 10, the money in Scotland increased to £1.5 million, the demanded proportion to the demand in England. That due to the money of Scotland would not make money of less value here than it is now in England. Goods in Scotland would sell as they sell in England. The product of the country would perhaps be 10 or 20% dearer to bring it equal to what it sells in England. But all sorts of manufacture would be cheaper, because in greater quantity, and all goods imported would be cheaper, money being easier borrowed. Merchants would deal for greater value, and the men of estates would be capacitated to trade, and able to sell at less profit. Nor would the land rise higher than in England, the buyer having his choice to buy elsewhere. The better security of a register may be supposed to add a year's purchase or due to the value. If the money of any particular country should increase beyond the proportion that the country bears to Europe, it would undervalue money there, or, according to the way of speaking, it would raise goods. But as money would be undervalued everywhere the same, or near to what it was there, it would be of great advantage to that country, though thereby money were less valuable. For that country would have the whole benefit of the greater quantity, and only bear a share of the lesser value, according to the proportion its money had to the money of Europe. When the Spaniards bring money or bullion into Europe, they lessen its value, but again by bringing it. Could they have the whole benefit of the greater quantity, they only bear a share of the lesser value. What has been said proves, first, that the civil money is uncertain value, because liable to be altered in the fineness or denomination by the prince. A crown has no more silver in it than half a crown or 15p had 150 or 200 years ago. And secondly, that the silver it has fallen from the value it had, the same quantity not being worth the fifth or 10th part of what it was worth then. A moneyed man then worth £1,000 was richer at that time than a landed man of 240 told of little rent. But the man of such a money estate would not now be worth 1/50th part of such a land estate. And thirdly, that though fallen so much, yet it is given as money or sold as bullion for much more than its value as metal, to which it will be reduced so soon as another money is set up. Considering the present state of Europe, France and Spain being masters of the mines, the other nations seem to be under the necessity of setting up another money. The only reason can be given why it has not yet been done is that the nature of money is not being widely understood, or they would not have continued buying silver from Spain above its value as metal when they had more valuable money of their own, and ever be more fitted for that use. The receiver of silver can have no great hopes that the value of it will be greater, for it is not to be supposed it will be applied to any other uses than it is now applied to, whereby the demand for it may be increased, or that the quantity exported and consumed will be greater than the quantity imported. Though it be scarce in any particular country, yet the moneyed man will have no great benefit by such scarcity, as has been shown. For unless the scarcity is the same in all places with which that country trades, money will not be valued much higher there than in other countries. If it is alleged that the mines in the West Indies may fail, it is the interest of the Spaniards to give out that their mines begin to fail, to keep up the price of silver. But if that were true, France ought not to have engaged herself in a war, when by the partition treaty she could have got any other parts of that monarchy that are valuable. Allowing the mines to fail, we ought rather to provide ourselves with another money. End of section 9. Section 5 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This audiobook recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3. The measures have been used to preserve and increase money have in some countries been opposite to what has been used in others, and opposite measures have been used in the same countries without any different circumstances to occasion them. Some countries have raised money in the denomination, when others have lowered it. Some have allayed it, when others who had allayed it have rectified it. Some have prohibited the export of money under severest penalties, when others have by law allowed it to be exported. Some thinking to add to the money have obliged traders to bring home bullion in proportion to the goods they imported. Most countries have tried some or all of these measures, and others of the same nature, and have tried contrary measures at one time, from what they used immediately before, from the opinion that since the method used had not the effect designed, a contrary would. Yet it has not been found that any of them have preserved or increased money, but on the contrary. The use of banks has been the best method yet practiced for the increase of money, and banks have been long used in Italy, but as I am informed, the invention of them was owing to Switzerland. Their money was copper, which was inconvenient by reason of its weight and bulk. To remedy this inconvenience, a bank was set up where the money might be pledged, and credit given to the value, which passed in payments, and facilitated trade. The Dutch, for the same reason, set up the Bank of Amsterdam. Their money was silver, but their trade was so great as to find payments even in silver inconvenient. And this bank, like that of Switzerland, is a secure place where merchants may give in money and have credit to trade with. Besides the convenience of easier and quicker payments, these banks save the expense of cashiers, the expense of bags and carriage, losses by bad money, and the money is safer than in the merchants' houses, for it is less liable to fire or robbery, the necessary measures being taken to prevent them. Merchants who have money in the Bank of Amsterdam and the people of other countries who deal with them are not liable to the changes in the money by its being allayed or altered in the denomination, for the bank receives no money but what of value, and is therefore called bank money, and though raised in current payments, it goes for the value it was pledged for in bank payments. The value of the bank changes a quarter or half%, as current money is more or less scarce. Banks where the money is pledged equal to the credit given are sure, for though demands are made of the whole, the bank does not fail in payment. By the constitution of this bank, the whole sum for which credit is given ought to remain there to be ready at demand. Yet the sum is lent by the managers for stock to the lumber, and is thought they lend great sums on other occasions. So far as they lend, they add to the money, which brings a profit to the country by employing more people and extending trade. They add to the money to be lent, whereby it is easier borrowed, and at less use, and the bank has benefit, but the bank is less sure, and though none suffer by it, or are apprehensive of danger, its credit being good, yet if the whole demands were made, or demands greater than the remaining money, they could not all be satisfied, till the bank had called in what sums were lent. The certain good it does, were more than balanced hazard, though once in 2 or 3 years it failed in payment. Provided the sums lent be well secured, the merchants who had money there might be disappointed of it at demand, but the security being good and interest allowed, money would be had on a small discount, perhaps at the par. Last fall, England set up a bank to have the conveniences of that at Amsterdam, and by their constitution to increase money. This bank was made up of subscribers who lent the king £1,200,000 at 8 1/3% for 11 years on a parliamentary fund, and were privileged bankers for that time. The sum due by the government was security to the people to make good any losses the bank might suffer. And this bank was safer than the goldsmith's notes in use before. It made a great addition to the money, having much greater sum of notes out, the money in bank, and the sum lent the king, which for the fund belonged to the subscribers, was negotiated at profit, and had the same effect in trade as money. I don't know how the notes came to be at discount, whether from the circumstances of the nation or from ill management. The fund of the Bank of Scotland was £100,000, of which 1/10 was paid in. This bank was safer than that of England, there being a register whereby most sums lent were secured. Its notes went for 4 or 5 times the value of the money in bank, and by so much as these notes went for more than the money in bank, so much was added to the money of the nation. And this bank was more useful than that of Amsterdam or England, its notes passing most payments, and through the whole country, the Bank of Amsterdam being only for that town, and that of England of little use but at London. The stop of payments which happened to the Bank of Scotland was foreseen, and it might have been prevented. The consumption of foreign goods and the expense in England being more than the export of goods did pay, the balance sent out in money lessened the credit of the bank, for as credit is voluntary, it depends on the quantity of money in the country, and increases or decreases with it. And coining notes of £1 supported the bank by furnishing paper for small payments, and thereby preventing a part of the demand for money. By these notes, the bank might have kept its credit till other methods had been taken to supply the country with money. Had not a report of raising the money occasioned an extraordinary demand, which in few days exhausted the money in bank, and put a stop to payments. It would not have been easy in that scarcity of money to have got enough to support the bank, though men of the best credit had undertaken it. That report of raising the money having only occasioned a demand from the people in Edinburgh. In a short time the notes would have come in so fast from the country that what money could have been got would not have answered the demand. If the Privy Council had lowered the money, the English crown to 5 shillings, and the other money in proportion, to take place 2 pence per crown in 3 days, and the other 3 pence in a month, the occasion of the demand being removed, in all appearance money would have been returned to the bank. If the state of the bank had been known or suspected by the people, such proclamation would have had the same effect, though the stop of payment had then happened. In that case, the support of the bank might have been the narrative of the proclamation. The security being good, fewer now would have kept their money to loss, rather than return it to the bank. And if in 3 days money had not come in so fast as expected, their lordships by a second proclamation might have lowered the crown to 5 shillings to take place then, and 6 pence more in 3 days. When the credit of the bank had been re-established, the money might have been cried up. If that had been necessary, the crown to 5 shillings and 5 pence, and the other money in proportion as it was before. Some are against all banks where the money does not lie pledged equal to the credit. First, they say the demand may be greater than the money in bank. And secondly, if we are declining in our trade or money, we are not at all or are less sensible of it. And if the bank fail, we are in a worse condition than before. To the first is answered, though the nation had no benefit by the addition of the bank mixed to the money, nor the people by being supplied with money when otherwise they could not, and at less interest, and though the proprietors had no gain by it, the other conveniences, as quicker and easier payments, etc., are more than equal to that hazard. Our banknotes, goldsmiths, and bankers' notes would not be preferred to money, everybody knowing such a stop may happen to the bank, and that the goldsmiths and bankers may fail. The other objection is the same as to say a merchant who had a small stock and was capable of employing greater, if some were offered him without interest equal to what he had, and more as his own increased, should refuse it, because he might fancy himself richer than he was, and if his own stock decreased, that some land would be taken from him. If 15,000 is supposed money in bank, and 75,000 pounds of notes out, 60,000 pounds is added to the money of the nation, without interest. For what is paid by the borrowers is got by the proprietors. As the money of the nation increases, the credit of the bank increases, and the sum of notes out is greater, and so far from making the people less sensible of the condition of the country, a surer judgment of the state of trade money may be made from the books of the bank than any other way. If trade can be carried on with 100,000 pounds and the balance due by foreigners, the same measures and a greater quantity of money would make the balance greater. Nor is that additional money the bank furnishes to be supposed will be lost, if by balance due from trade the simple money increases. That credit may fail from an accident when money is plentiful, and would soon be recovered. 'Tis only lost by scarcity of money, and such a credit may support trade, in cases where without it trade would sink, but cannot do prejudice. Another objection is made against the bank, that it encourages the exportation of money, by furnishing sums in such species as were of most value abroad. To answer this objection, I shall make a supposition. A B merchant has occasion for £1,000 in Holland, and desires a CD banker to give him a bill for that value. There is no money due in Holland to Scots merchants, so CD must export the money to pay the bill he draws. But there being no bank, nor any possibility of getting £1,000 in 40p pieces, he sends out money of different species. This does not hinder the money to go out, but makes the exchange dearer by 2 or 3% than it would have been if 40p pieces could have been got. And though no other money were left, but old marks, if a balance is due, this will go out, though not worth 10p. The exchange will be so much higher, the profit of exporting is the same, and so far from doing hurt to the country, the bank, by furnishing such pieces as could be exported to least loss, kept the exchange 2 or 3% lower than otherwise it would have been, and saved yearly the sending out a considerable sum to pay a greater balance, the higher exchange would have occasioned. End of section 5. Section 8 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5, Part 1. National power and wealth consists in numbers of people and magazines of home and foreign goods. This depends on trade, and trade depends on money. So to be powerful and wealthy in proportion to other nations, we should have money in proportion with them. For the best laws without money cannot employ the people, improve the product, or advance manufacture and trade. The measures have been used to preserve and increase money, or such as are not proposed, are attended with difficulties, and though the difficulties were removed, are ineffectual, and not capable to furnish money so as to improve the country or extend the trade in any proportion to the improvements and the trade of other nations. Credit that promises payment of money cannot well be extended beyond a certain proportion it ought to have with the money, and if we have so little money that any credit could be given upon it would be inconsiderable. It remains to be considered whether any other goods than silver can be made money with the same safety and convenience. From what has been said about the nature of money, Chapter 1, it is evident that any other goods which have the qualities necessary in money may be made money equal to their value, with safety and convenience. There was nothing of humor or fancy in making silver to be money, and it was made money because it was thought best qualified for that use. I shall endeavor to prove that another money may be established with all the qualities necessary in money in a greater degree than silver, with other qualities that the silver has not, and preferable for that use, though silver was a product of Scotland, and that by this money the people may be employed, the country improved, manufacture advanced, and trade domestic and foreign be carried on, and the wealth and power attained. What I propose will I hope be found safe and practicable, advantageous in general to Scotland, and in particular to every Scotsman. But as I offer to prove that what I shall propose is more qualified for the use of money than silver, so before I come to the proposal, I shall show some defects in silver money, and that it has not, and nor does not answer the design of money. Money is the measure by which goods are valued, the value by which goods are exchanged, and in which contracts are made payable. Money is not a pledge, a sum call it. It's a value paid, or contracted to be paid, with which 'tis supposed the receiver may, as his occasions require, buy an equal quantity of the same goods he has sold, or other goods equal in value to them, and that money is the most secure value, either to receive, to contract for, or to value goods by, which is least liable to a change in its value. And silver money is more uncertain in its value than other goods, so less qualified for the use of money. The power the magistrate has to order the money in its denomination or fineness takes away the chief quality for which silver was made money. In countries where the money is often changed in the denomination or fineness, it is more uncertain to contract for money than it was in the state of barter to contract for goods. If 100 ounces of silver are lent or contracted for, and a bond given for them denominated pounds, payable in a year, in that time half a crown is raised to a crown, and 50 ounces pays the 100 lent or contracted for. Though the magistrate did never order the money in its denomination or fineness, yet it is more uncertain in its value than other goods. Goods of the same kind and quality differ in value, from any change in their quantity or in the demand for them. In either of these cases, goods are said to be dearer or cheaper, being more or less valuable, and equal to a greater or lesser quantity of other goods or of money. Silver in bullion or money changes its value from any change in its quantity or in the demand for it. In either of these cases, goods are said to be dearer or cheaper, but it is silver or money is dearer or cheaper, being more or less valuable, and equal to a greater or lesser quantity of goods. Perishable goods as cloth, etc., increase or decrease in quantity as the demand for them increases or decreases, so the value continues equal or near the same. More durable goods as metals, materials for shipping, etc., increase in quantity beyond the demand for them, so are less valuable. Silver or money increases in quantity by so much as is imported to Europe, more than is consumed or exported. The demand has increased, but not in proportion to the quantity. For, first, the same quantity of silver or money won't purchase the same quantity of goods as before. And secondly, 10% was paid for the use of it, and now it is to be had at 6, in Holland at 3 or 4. An ounce of silver being worth 5 shillings 2 pence, and a crown worth 60 pence, unless ordered by the prince, makes most people insensible of any change in the value of silver or money. But as 1 year the bowl of barley sold for 2 crowns, and the year after for 3, this difference comes from a change in the quantity or demand of the barley or of the money, and that of the money will occasion a difference in the price, as well as that of the barley. If last year 100 sheep were sold for 100 crowns, and the person sold them desires this year to buy the same number of sheep, though the quantity of the sheep and the demand for them be the same as last year, yet if the money is increased in quantity and the demand for it not increase in proportion, the 100 sheep will be equal in value to more money than the year before, so the money is cheaper. If the quantity of the money and the demand for it be the same as before, yet if the sheep are lesser in quantity or the demand for them greater, the 100 sheep will be equal to a greater quantity of money, so the sheep are dearer. So though the magistrate did never order the money, yet it is liable to change in its value as silver, from any change in its quantity or in the demand for it. And the receiver is doubly uncertain whether the money he receives or contracts for will, when he has occasion, buy him the same goods he has sold, or other goods equal in value to them, because a difference may happen in the value of the money or the goods he is to buy. And this uncertainty is, though both money and goods were certain in their quality. The difference of the prices of most goods, from changes in their quantity or in the demand for them, would be much prevented if magazines were kept. But the difference in the prices from the greater or lesser quantity of or demand for money and cannot be prevented so long as silver is the money. That the money is of much lesser value than it was will appear by the value of goods, land, and money had 200 years ago. By the Acts of the Council of Edinburgh, it appears that anno 1495, the fields for wheat was 6 shillings and 8 pennies Scots money the boll. Anno 1520, claret and the white French wines were ordered to be sold in the taverns at 6 pennies Scots the pint, and ale at 20 pennies Scots the gallon. Anno 1526, the mills belonging to the town were let for 400 marks Scots. Now they give 13,000. The petty customs at least then let for 115 marks. Anno 1532, the load of malt containing 9 furlets was ordered to be sold at 32 shillings Scots the load. Anno 1551 ordered that the best mutton bog be sold for 12 pennies Scots, the second salt for 10 pennies, and the worst salt for 8 pennies. Anno 1553, the 9 furlets of malt old measure, with a charity, is ordered to be sold for 36 shillings Scots. The landwood bread to weigh 40 ounces, and the town bread 36 ounces, the 4-penny or plague loaf. Anno 1555, the bakers ordered for each bar of wheat to deliver 7 score loaves at 16 ounces the loaf. By an act of the 5th Parliament of Queen Mary, anno 1555, it is ordained that the wines imported upon the east and north coast shall not be sold dearer than 20 pounds Scots the tun of Bordeaux wine, and 16 pounds the tun of Rocher wine. The pint of Bordeaux wine 10 pennies, and the pint of Rocher wine 8 pennies. And that of wine imported upon the west coast be sold no dearer than 16 pounds Scots the tun of Bordeaux wine, and 12 or 13 pounds the tun of Rocher wine. 8 pennies the pint of Bordeaux wine, and 6 pennies the pint of Rocher wine. So that what a 5-pound bought 200 years ago will not be bought now for 100 pounds, nor goods in greater plenty or of less value than now, On the contrary, as these acts were made to regulate the prices of goods, it is reasonable to think they were in lesser quantity than now, proportional to the demand, so of more value. But the money having increased in quantity more than in demand, and having been ordered by the prince, is fallen in value, and £100 now is not worth what £5 was worth before. Land may be computed to have been improved in 200 years, that the world pays now 2 bulls the acre, paid then but 1 bull, which may be known from old rentals. Money gave them 10% interest, and the 384 acres rented at bull the acre, beaten at 8 shillings and 4 penny the truder, so the property of these acres was equal to or worth £100. £100 gave £10 interest, and the 384 acres paid only such a quantity of victual as was sold for £10. But as land, being preferable to money for many reasons, is valued now at 20 years' purchase, though money is at 6%, so that the land then may have been valued at 14 years' purchase, or £140. As the quantity of money has increased since that time, much more than the demand for it, and as the same quantity of silver has received a higher denomination, so of consequence money is of lesser value. A lesser interest is given for it, a greater quantity of it is given for the same quantity of goods, and the land is worth more years' purchase. The value of such land now, the acre rented at 2 bulls, valued at £8, 6 shillings and 6 pence, money at 6%, so land at 20 years' purchase would be £8,000 by this computation. Money is only worth the 20th part of goods, and the 57th part of land it was worth 200 years ago. Part of this difference is from the improvement made on land, and the greater demand for land, the quantity being the same, whereby its value is greater. The rest of the difference is from the money being more increased in quantity than in demand, whereby its value is lesser and its use lower, as likewise from its being altered in the denomination. There was then a greater quantity of silver in the same number of pence than there is now, which appears by several acts of Parliament made about that time. And in 1375, in the 8th part of King James III, the ounce of silver was ordered to be sold for 12 shillings Scots, and 12 groats was made of the ounce of silver. The 3rd of November 1554, by an act of the Town Council of Edinburgh, the ounce of silver was ordered to be sold at 18 shillings and 8 pennies Scots. But these acts do not mention the fineness the silver was of. Suppose the same number of pence had twice or 4 times the value of silver in them that they have now, then silver is only fallen to 1/10, or 1/5 of the value it had to goods, and to 1/28, or 1/14 of the value it had to land. But still money is fallen to 1/20 of the value it had to goods, and to 1/57 of the value it had to land. The manner of lending money in France, and I suppose in other Roman Catholic countries, is by way of perpetual interest, redeemable by the debtor, and which the creditor may dispose or assign, but can never demand the principal, and is usually by law to take any interest for money if the creditor has power to call for the principal, though the term for payment be many years after the money is lent. Suppose the manner of lending in Scotland was the same 200 years ago, and that A.B. having 768 acres of land, rented at a bowl of victual the acre, the yearly rent 48 truder at £5 Scots the truder, £20 sterling. C.D. was £100 in money to have lent to A.B., and interest being at 10%, to have received an annual interest of £10, which he left to his son, and thought he had provided sufficiently for him, £10 being equal to or worth 24 truder of victual. But interest being lowered to 6%, money being raised in the denomination, and of less value by its greater quantity, the £6 now paid for the annual interest of that £100 is not worth 1 truder of victual, and the 384 acres, or the half of A.B.'s land 200 years ago, only equal to 100 or £140, is now worth 57 times that sum, the rental supposed to be doubled, and its value at 20 years' purchase. End of section 8. Section 10 of Money and Trade considered by John Law. This audiobook's recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6. I did not intend to have said anything about the doctor's proposal. That affair having been referred to a committee who are to make their report. But several people who are of opinion that the doctor's proposal is not practicable, being against what I am to propose, because they think it is the same with his in some other dress. I thought it needful to give a short account of the doctor's proposal, and in what I differ from him. His proposal is to give out the notes upon land, to be cancelled by yearly payments of about 2.25% for 45 years, and that these notes be current as silver money to the value they are coined for. If notes given out of that manner were equal in value to silver money, then every landed man in Scotland would desire a share of this great and certain advantage. I don't see how it is practicable to give every landed man a share. Supposing it practicable, 45 years' purchase in these notes will not be of so much value as 20 years' purchase of silver money. No anticipation is equal to what a rate is. A year's rent now is worth 15 years' rent 50 years hence, because that money laid out at interest by that time will produce so much. And though the Parliament would force these notes, yet they would not have currency, any more than if the government coined pieces of gold equal in weight and fineness with a guinea, and ordered them to pass for £5. These bills are proposed to be repaid and cancelled in term of years, without paying any interest, but only so much as would defray the charges of the office, which would not be above 0.5%. There would then be many lenders, but few if any borrowers, except from the land bank. First, if the landed man borrows of the moneyed man, he would satisfy his creditor, have bills to lend. The moneyed man would likewise have of these bills to lend, but there would be no borrowers. Or if any desired to borrow, they would have these bills at a very low use. Suppose at 2%, then these bills would be considerably less valuable than silver. Anything that is proposed to have a currency as money that is given for lesser interest than silver money will be of less value. It is not to be supposed any person will lend silver money to 2% when they can have 6% in England. So £100 silver money will yield as much as £300 of these bills would, and £100 in silver be equal to £300 in bills. The £6 the £100 of silver yields, being silver, and the £6 the 300 of bills yields being paid in these bills, and the £1 of silver being worth £3 in bills, so the £6 interest of the £100 in silver would be equal to £18, or the interest of £900 in bills. And though they were given out to be repaid in 20 years, at 5% for that time, or in 10 years, at 10%, they would not be equally valuable with silver. The difference would not be so great as when given out for 45 years. The advantage the nation would have by the doctor's proposal is that though these notes sell under the value of silver money, and the £500 in notes were only equal to £100 in silver, yet the nation would have the same advantage by that £500 in notes as if an addition of £100 had been made to the silver money. So far as these bills sell under the value of the silver money, so far would exchange with other countries be raised. And if goods did not keep their price, that is, if they did not sell for a greater quantity of these bills, equal to the difference betwixt them and silver, and goods exported would be undervalued, and goods imported would be overvalued, as has been explained page 43 and 44 about exchange. The landed man would have no advantage by this proposal, unless he owed a debt. For though he received £50 of these bills, for the same quantity of victual he was in use to receive, £10 silver money, Yet that 50 pounds would only be equal in value to 10 pounds of silver, and purchase only the same quantity of home or foreign goods. The landed man who had his rent paid him in money would be a great loser, for by as much as these bills were under the value of silver, he would receive so much less than before. The landed man who owed a debt would pay his debt with less value than was contracted for, but the creditor would lose what the debtor gained. Dr. C seems to be offended at my meddling in this affair, having, as he says, borrowed what I know of this subject from him. Two persons may project the same thing, but so far as I can judge, what I am to propose is different from his, and what I had formed a scheme of several years before I had seen any of his papers, which I can prove, if that were necessary, by persons worse I then showed it to. I have not, to my knowledge, borrowed anything from Dr. C. Land indeed is the value upon which he found his proposal, and it is upon land that I found mine. If for that reason I have encroached upon his proposal, the Bank of Scotland may be said to have done the same. There were banks in Europe long before the doctor's proposal, and the books have been written on the subject before and since. The foundation I go upon has been known so long as money has been lent on land, and so long as a heritable bond has been equal to a quantity of land. Whether the structure he or I have built upon that foundation be most safe and advantageous and practicable, the Parliament can best judge. Dr. C.'s proposal is by anticipation to make a land worth 50 or 100 years' purchase, and maintains that £100 to be paid yearly for 10, 50, or 100 years, as value pledged for 1,000, 5,000, or 10,000 pounds of bills, and that these bills will be equal to silver money. If he can satisfy the nation that his proposal is practicable, he does a very great service, and gives a certain advantage to the landman without wronging the moneyed man. I have shown the reasons why I think the proposal is not practicable, that notwithstanding any act of Parliament made to force these bills, they would fall much under the value of silver. But allowing they were at first equal to silver, it is next to impossible that two different species of money shall continue equal in value to one another. Everything receives a value from its use, and the value is rated according to its quality, quantity, and demand. Though goods of different kinds are equal in value now, yet they will change their value from any unequal change in their quality, quantity, or demand. And as he leaves it to choice of the debtor to pay in silver money or bills, he confines the value of the bills to the value of the silver money, but he cannot confine the value of the silver money to the value of the bills, so that these bills must fall in value as silver money falls, and may fall lower. Silver may rise above the value of these bills, but these bills cannot rise above the value of silver. What I shall propose is to make money of land equal to its value, and the money to be equal in value to silver money, and not liable to fall in value as silver money falls. Any goods that have the qualities necessary in money may be made money equal to their value. 5 ounces of gold is equal in value to 20 pounds, and may be made money to that value. An acre of land rented at 2 bulls of Ito, the Vito at 8 pounds, and the land at 20 years' purchase, is equal to 20 pounds, and may be made money equal to that value, for it has all the qualities necessary in money. And that acre of land cannot be called to the value of 50 pounds, no more than the 5 ounces of gold. And though the 5 ounces of gold, the 20 pounds silver money, and the acre of land be now equal in value, yet they cannot well continue so. For as I have shown already, any disproportionate change in the quality, quantity, or in the demand of either of them will make the same quantity of the one equal to greater or lesser quantity of the others. Land is what in all appearance will keep its value best, and embrace value, but cannot well fall, and gold or silver are liable to many accidents, whereby their value may lessen, but cannot well rise in value. End of section 10. Section 3 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2, Part 2. A nation may gain where the merchant loses, but wherever the merchant gains, the nation gains equal, and so much more as the maintenance and the wages of the people employed and the duty on the goods amounts to. If the ship insured is lost, the nation loses, and the merchant loses nothing. But in that case, the insurer is the merchant, and loses equal to the nation. As trade depends on money, so the increase or decrease of the people depends on trade. If they have employment at their home, they are kept at home. And if the trade is greater than serves to employ the people, it brings more from places where they are not employed. Sir William Petty values men at 20 years' purchase. By that computation, a seaman whose wage is 40 shillings a month is valued £480. Scotland has a very inconsiderable trade, because she has but a very small part of the money. There is a little home trade, but the country is not improved, nor the product manufactured. There is a little of the first branch of foreign trade, and that is carried on with great disadvantage to the people, who pay dearer for most foreign goods, and are worse served than other nations. If they have any cheaper, 'tis from the lower duty on the import. In Scotland, low prices are given for goods bought up to be exported, the merchant's profit being great. If 100 stone wool is worth in Holland 10 pieces of linen cloth, these 10 pieces are sold in Scotland for the value of 180 or 200 stone of such wool. Such goods as do not yield that good profit are not exported, and these that do are not exported in any quantity, the merchant's stock being small. Scotland has no part of the other branches of foreign trade, not being able to trade so cheap as other nations. Some think if interest were lowered by law and trade would increase, merchants being able to employ more money and trade cheaper. Such a law would have many inconveniences. It is much to be doubted whether it would have any good effect. Indeed, if lowness of interest were the consequence of a greater quantity of money, the stock applied to trade would be greater, and the merchants would trade cheaper from the easiness of borrowing and the lower interest of money, without any inconveniences attending it. Though interest were at 3% in Holland, and continued at 6% in Scotland, if money were to be had equal to the demands at 6%, the advantages we have for trade, which the Dutch have not, would enable us to extend trade to its other branches, notwithstanding the difference of interest. If money in Scotland were equal to the demands at 6%, the Dutch could not trade so cheap in herring, the hindrances of that trade being the consequences of the scarcity of money. The materials for carrying on the fishing are cheaper in Holland, but the cheapness of victualling alone would balance that. And the dearth of these materials, as of other foreign goods coming from the scarcity of money, that being remedied, these materials and other foreign goods that are not the product of Holland would be sold as cheap in Scotland. Exchange is when a merchant exports to greater value than he imports, and has money due aboard. Another importing to a greater value than he exported has occasion for money aboard. This learns by paying money to the other of the weight and fineness with that is due him, or to that value, and saves the trouble, hazard, and expense to himself of sending money out, to the other of bringing money home, and to both the expense of recoining. So long as foreign trade and expense kept equal, exchange was at the par. But when the people imported for great value, or had other occasions aboard, more than they export, and the expense of foreigners among them would balance, there was a necessity of sending out the balance in money or bullion. And the merchant or gentleman who owed, or had occasion for money aboard, to save the trouble, expense, and hazard of sending it out, and gave so much per cent to another as the trouble, expense, and hazard was valued at. Thus exchange rose above the par and became a trade. Mr. Mann on Trade, page 100, says, the exchange being against a nation is of advantage to that nation, and it supposes if £100 at London is worth no more than £90 of the same money at Amsterdam, the Dutch to send £500,000 of goods to England, and the English £400,000 of goods to Holland. It follows that the money due the English at Amsterdam will balance £440,000 due to the Dutch at London, so £60,000 pays the balance. Mr. Mann does not consider that the Dutch goods worth £500,000 when exchange was at the par are worth at London £555,555, when £90 at Amsterdam is worth £100 at London, and the £400,000 of English goods in Holland are only worth £360,000, that sum being equal by exchange to £400,000 in England. So in place of England's having an advantage of £40,000, as he alleges by the exchange being against her, she pays £95,555 more than if exchange had been at par. When exchange is above the par, it is not only paid for the sums due of balance, but affixes the whole exchange to the place where the balance is due. If the balance is £20,000, and the sums exchanged by merchants who have money aboard with others who are owing or have occasion for money there, being £6,000, the bills for the £6,000 are sold at or near the same price with the £20,000 of balance. It likewise affects the exchange to countries where no balance is due. If the exchange betwixt Scotland and Holland is 3% above the par against Scotland, betwixt England and Holland it is a par, though no balance is due by Scotland to England, yet the exchange with England will rise. For £100 in England remitted to Scotland by Holland will yield £103. So, betwixt Scotland and England, it may be supposed to be had at 2%, being less trouble than to remit by Holland. Goods are sold to foreigners according to the first cost. If goods worth £100 in Scotland are worth £130 in England, these goods will be exported, 30% being supposed enough for the charges and profit. If the price for these goods lower in Scotland from £100 to £80, the price in England will not continue at £130. It will lower proportionably, for either Scots merchants will undersell one another, or English merchants will export these goods themselves. So if they rise in Scotland from £100 to £120, they will rise proportionably in England, unless the English can be served with these goods cheaper from other places, or can supply the use of them with goods of another kind. This being supposed, it follows that, by so much exchange is above the par, so much all goods exported are sold cheaper, and all goods imported are sold dearer than before. If a merchant sends goods yearly to England first cost, charges and profit £6,000 money in England of the same standard with money in Scotland, and no balance due, but a balance due to Holland, raising the exchange 3% above the par to Holland, and affecting the exchange to England 2%. £5,882 7 in England pays the goods, that sum by exchange being equal to £6,000 in Scotland, so that the balance due to Holland, by raising the exchange to other countries, occasions a loss to Scotland of £117, 13 shillings on the value of £6,000 of goods sent to England. English goods are sold so much dearer. If an English merchant sends goods yearly to Scotland, first cost, charges, and profit £6,000. £6,120 must be paid for these goods in Scotland, being only equal to £6,000 in England. If the exchange had been at the par, the Scots goods sent to England would have sold £117, 14 shillings more, and the English goods sent to Scotland £120 less. Thus, to all places with whom exchange is above the par, goods sent out are sold so much less, and goods brought from thence are sold so much dearer, as the exchange is above the par, whether sent out or brought in by Scots or foreign merchants. The merchant who deals in English goods gains no more than when exchange was at the par, though he sells dearer, nor the merchant who deals in Scots goods less, though he sells cheaper. They have both the same profit as when exchange was at the par. Scotland pays 2% more for English goods, and England 2% less for Scots goods. All or a great part of the loss falls at last on the landed man in Scotland, and it is the landed man in England has all or a great part of the benefit. Nations finding the export of money or bullion to pay the balance due by trade, a lot of so much riches, and very hurtful to trade, might have discharged the import of such goods as the people could best want, or laid a duty on them, such as might have lessened their consumption. They might have given encouragement to industry, whereby the product would have been increased and improved, or discouraged extravagant consumption, whereby the overplus for export would have been greater. Any one of these methods would have brought trade and exchange equal, and have made the balance due them. But in place of these measures, they prohibit bullion and money to be exported, which could not well have any other effect than to raise the exchange equal to the hazard. Such laws added to the export of money or bullion, which may be supposed 3% more, and these laws by such effect were hurtful, making all goods exported sell yet 3% cheaper, and all goods imported 3% dearer. The stricter they were executed, the higher the exchange rose, and the more they did hurt. The balance was still sent out in money or bullion by the merchant who owed it, by the banker who gave the bills, or by the foreigner to whom it was due. End of section 3. In section 14 of Money and Trade Considered by John Law, this report's recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8. The natural advantages the Dutch have for trade are their situation at the mouths of the rivers of Germany and being near the bucket trade. Their natural disadvantages are smallness of territory and barrenness of soil, producing little but what's forced, want of mines, long winters, unwholesome air, marshy, so obliged to great expense for foundation to their buildings, in making and keeping up the highways, and in draining the country yearly, a dangerous coast, difficult entry to their rivers, the sea to defend against on one side, and powerful neighbors on the other, and heavy taxes, the consequence of these other disadvantages. Yet they have so improved their few advantages that they are become a rich and powerful people. What has contributed to their riches and power was the early protection and favor the government gave to trade, the liberty which was given to people of different religions, the freedom of trade allowed to strangers, the example of the ruler's economy, but chiefly the neglect of trade in other countries, particularly in Spain, who forced the people and the trade of Flanders to Holland. Scotland has by nature many advantages for trade. A large territory of easy defense, plenty of people, a wholesome air, mines, a proper situation for the eastern and western trades, near the bucket trade, a safe coast, rivers of easy entry, the seas and rivers stocked with fish. But the numbers of people, the greatest riches of other nations, are a burden to us. The land is not improved, the product is not manufactured, the fish and other advantages for foreign trade are neglected, and the reason generally given is that laziness and want of honesty are natural to us. If want of honesty and laziness were natural, they would be so to mankind, or if peculiar to people, this would be so to the Dutch rather than to us. The air of Holland is grosser, which inclines to laziness, and the country not producing railways to maintain the inhabitants would force them to rob or cheat their neighbors or one another. But it is more reasonable to think laziness and want of honesty are vices, the consequences of poverty, and poverty the consequence of faulty administration. If the same measures had been taken in Scotland for encouraging trade as was taken in Holland, we had been a more powerful and rich nation than Holland. If Spain, France, and Britain, or any one of them had applied to trade as early and upon the same measures Holland did, Holland would not have been inhabited. But by their earlier application and the wrong measures of other countries, they have got such great magazines of what's necessary for their maintenance and defense, of rich commodities to sell to other nations, of materials for shipping, etc., and such a quantity of silver, esteemed above its value as metal by being used as money, that in all appearance, so long as silver is used as money, the great quantity they have of it, with their great economy, enabling them to undersell other nations, they will maintain the rank they hold in trade, and consequently in power, notwithstanding their natural disadvantages, the present application, the natural advantages of other nations. This country is more capable of extended trade than any other country of Europe, yet it is reduced to a very low state, and trade is ruined, the national stock is wasted, the people forsake the country, the rents of land are unpaid, houses in towns and the farms in the country are thrown upon the owner's hands. The creditor cannot have the interest of his money to live upon, and the debtor's person and estate are exposed to the law. The landed man, by having engaged his personal estate for the payment of a species which is not in his power to perform, and having no alternative, by the law his person is at the mercy of the creditor, and his estate to be sold for so much of that species as it will yield. If 2 or 3 moneyed men call in their money, with the design to force their debtors to part with their estates, at what prices they please to impose, they may bring the price of land to 15 or 10 years' purchase, for they would not take bonds in payment, and a few alone would be in a condition to buy with money. If victuals should prove scarce, as we have not goods or money for any value to send out for cause, so only a part of the people could be maintained. The better part would have bread, but the more necessary part, the labouring men, would be forced to leave the country, or to starve on it, and nor would they fare better in England, for the scarcity of money has set idle many of the people of England, so there are more already than there is employment for, and our people, at least many of them, would meet the same fate they had endeavoured to evade. The landed men would want people to labour the ground. They would perhaps get food and clothing for themselves and their families, but this they were owing to, in all appearance, would get nothing. For the case being general, and the landed men the stronger party, they would not suffer their liberty and estates to be taken from them. And though the law could be put in execution, and the estates of the landed men were put to sale, as there would be few purchasers, the price of the land would fall very low. Suppose the land was sold or given among the creditors for 15 years' purchase, or less. It would be sold for more than it was worth, for they would not find people to labor it. So many would be sufferers, and none gainers. If neither of these cases happen, yet this country cannot well subsist in the condition it is in. If this opportunity is neglected, if wrong or ineffectual measures are taken, in all appearance we will be in confusion before we have another opportunity. To raise or lay the money, to coin the plate, or regulate the trade, are obvious measures to supply the want of money, and it is thought any one of them will bring us out of our difficulties. When they come to be examined, raising or laying the money will be found no help but a hurt to the country, whatever circumstances are. The others may prove ineffectual. 'Tis thought our import and expense abroad this last year exceeded our export by a very considerable sum. So to make the balance equal, we must not only return equal to the money which was sent out last year, but likewise so much more at the want of that money, and with the addition the banknote of money may have lessened the yearly value. So though it is possible that coining the plate and regulating trade may bring the balance to our side, yet it is to be feared the consequences will show that it is not very practicable, for that and other reason already given. However, they may assist, but in regulating our import, regard ought to be had that the sale of our goods abroad be no way hindered. For if that is not taken care of, we shall lose more for want of market than we shall save by importing less. And though all necessary care be taken, yet the assistance may reasonably be expected from these measures will not relieve us. They may keep us lingering in the state we are, exposed to confusion in the home and to insults from abroad. Most people think scarcity of money is only the consequence of balance due, but it is the cause as well as the consequence, and the effectual way to bring the balance to our side is to add to the money. Our poor have been computed at 200,000. Our people were more than now, but our poor may be as many as then. Suppose only 100,000, and by the addition to our money 50,000 of them were employed, and only for 1/2 of the year. They labor to be paid 3d, and worth 3d more to the employer. The consumption a penny more than now. The yearly value of the nation would be increased by such labor 189,583 pounds, 6 shillings and 8 pence. If the country people about a person sterling have to divide for 20,000 pounds of linen, serges, and other manufacture more than is bought up, though these goods exported will yield 20 or 30% profit, yet the owners can't export them, the goods being in so many different hands, and not having correspondents abroad to whom they could trust the sale of them. A, B, and C are satisfied for that profit to take the trouble and hazard of exporting them, but the money being scarce, they cannot get any to borrow, though their security be good. Nor cannot well have credit for the goods from so many different people they are strangers to. If they could have credit for them, yet these country people must be idle till A, B, and C pay them out of their returns from abroad. So for want of money to exchange by, and goods fall in value, and the manufacture decays. It cannot well be known what some will serve the occasions of the nation. For as manufacture and trade advance, the demand for money will increase. But the many poor we have always had, is a great presumption we have never had money enough. England has been computed to have had 14 millions in gold and silver, and at the same time had paper money for a greater sum. Yet England never had money enough to employ the people. 50 million would not improve England so far as it is capable of improvement. If all the people were then employed and to the best advantage, more money would bring more people from other countries. The progress of Holland by a great quantity of money and numbers of people, the consequence of much money, is able to bear a share in the wealth of Europe, equal to many times the same number of acres of better land in England. Yet Holland has not the advantages for trade that England has, so that the country that can have money equal to the demand will be more powerful than any other country with the same advantages whose money is less than the demand. If money were given to the people in greater quantity than there was a demand for, money would fall in its value. But if only given equal to the demand, it will not fall in value. At present, perhaps 300,000 or 400,000 pounds is more than there is a demand for, but as the trade and manufacture increase, the demand for money will be greater. What I have proposed to supply the country with money may be reduced to this. If instead of £100 rent is worth £2,000 in silver money, and this instead can be conveyed by paper, and this paper be capable of being divided, then that instead may be made current money for £2,000, and any person who receives such paper money receives a value equal to the same sum of silver money, as silver is valued now. If it is coined for 15 years' purchase, then that paper money will be more valuable than silver. For £1,500 in that paper, they purchase land worth £2,000 of silver money. If it is coined for 25 years' purchase, then that paper money will not be so valuable as silver. For £2,000 in silver will buy as much land as £2,500 in paper. Since it is very practicable to make land money, it would be contrary to reason to limit the industry of the people by making it depend on a species that is not in our power, but in the power of our enemies. When we have a species of our own, it will be more qualified. And considering the state of this country from the great scarcity of money, that the value of the lands fall, rents are unpaid, farms are thrown upon the master's hand, and the latter's person is stayed exposed to the law, be engaged to pay a species which there is scarce any in the nation. Second, the hazard the moneyed man is in from the uncertainty of the value of money, and the danger of confusion, in which case the moneyed man may lose all. Third, the low state of a trade, that many of the people who depended on trade and lived well are starving or forced abroad. Fourth, that the other degrees of the people suffer in proportion. Fifth, that the nation in this condition may run into confusion, and is exposed to its enemies. Considering the benefit the nation will have by this addition to the money, that the land will be improved, so be more valuable, rents be well paid, and that the debtors by paying a value equal to what is contracted for may free their persons and estates from the danger they are now exposed to. Second, that the moneyed man will receive punctual payment, in money of a more certain value than silver or any other goods, and there be no danger of confusion. Third, that the trade will flourish, and those who depend on it be encouraged. Fourth, that the condition of the other degrees of the people will be bettered. Fifth, that the nation will be able to maintain itself in order, and resist its enemies. These reasons considered, the question then will be whether we will improve the country as much as it is capable, without being at any expense for measure of trade, or continue as we are in hopes of silver from other nations. It will be a great advantage to this nation that by the register we are capable of putting this proposal in execution and enjoying the benefit of it, when other nations, though they resolved upon it, would for some years be incapable of it. Though for the general good of Europe, it were to be wished England were as capable of it as we are. I have not had time to put my thoughts in that order they ought to have been, and am forced to leave out answers I designed to have given to some objections I have heard made against this proposal. But if the Parliament think good to enter upon the consideration of it, I do not doubt but it may be made appear to be of great and certain advantage, that it cannot possibly be any way hurtful to the country in general, and that it may be so ordered as not to be hurtful to any person, but on the contrary. End of section 14. End of money and trade considered, with a proposal for supplying the nation with money, by Zhong Lu. Section 4 of Money and Trade Considered, by Zhong Lu. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2, Part 3. Suppose the money of Scotland, England, Holland, of the same weight and fineness. Scotland to trade with no other places. To exchange it as a par. The yearly export from Scotland first cost £300,000, charges and profit 30%. Goods imported £280,000, charges and profit 30%. One half the trade to be carried on by Scots merchants, the other half by English and Dutch. Due to Scotland, 4.5 of the export carried out by their own merchants, 195,000. Due for the other half carried out by English and Dutch, 150,000. Sum 345,000. Due by Scotland to England and Holland for goods imported by English and Dutch, 182,000. Due for goods imported by Scots merchants, 140,000. Sum 322,000. The expense of Scotsmen abroad, more than of foreigners in Scotland, £40,000. If this is supposed the yearly state of the trade and expense of Scotland, there will be a balance due of £17,000, and unless the Scots returns the consumption of foreign goods, so as to import less, or returns the consumption of their own goods, so as to export more, or increase or improve the product, so as the export be greater or more valuable, or return in their expense abroad. Since that balance must be paid, it will go out in money or bullion, and occasions exchange to rise 3%. The prohibition on the export of money 3 more. If Scotsmen export it, the nation saves the £1,020 exchange on the 17,000 of balance due, which is lost if English merchants export it. But the loss such a rise in exchange occasions on the goods is more considerable. The £195,000 due abroad for goods sent out of Scotland by Scots merchants will be paid with £183,962 English or Dutch money, and that sum be equal by exchanging 6% to £195,000 in Scotland. The £150,000 due for first class of goods carried out by English or Dutch merchants will be paid with £141,510 English or Dutch money, and that sum being equal to £150,000 in Scotland. The £182,000 due by Scotland for goods imported by English and Dutch merchants will come to £192,920 in Scotland, and the £140,000 first class of goods brought home by Scots merchants will come to £148,400 in Scotland. So the account will run thus: due to Scotland for goods exported, 183,962. Bought from abroad, first cost, 140,000. Balance of expense abroad, 40,000. Due to Scotland abroad, 3,962. Due by Scotland for goods imported by English and Dutch, 192,920. English and Dutch take back in goods, 150,000. Due to English and Dutch in Scotland, 42,000 £3,920. £3,962 due brought to Scotland in Scots money. £4,199. Remains due by Scotland. £38,721. So the rise in the exchange of 3% by the balance due of £17,000 and 3 more by the prohibition on the export of money occasions a loss to Scotland of £21,721 and makes the next year's balance £38,721, though the trade be the same as before, of which £21,721 lost by exchange, while half would be saved if money were allowed to be exported. Since the exchange being 6% above the par occasions the loss of £21,721, then raising the money 8 1/3%, having raised the exchange with England to 14% and with Holland to 30%, makes the loss proportionably greater. Scots goods being supposed to continue at the same prices they were sold for before the money was raised, or not to rise in the same proportion with the money. For when exchange was at the par, £100 of Scots goods were sold abroad for £130 English money, but £114 English money being now equal by exchange to £130 in Scotland, the Scots merchant can afford to sell the same quantity of goods for £114 that he sold before at £130, and have the same profit. So foreign goods worth abroad £100 and sold in Scotland for £130 when exchange was at the par, cannot be sold now for less than £150 in Scotland, that sum being all equal to £130 English money, and the merchant's profit is no greater than when he sold the same quantity of goods for £130. It may not be improper to consider what consequences would attend the lowering the money to the English standard, and allowing it to be exported. The former state of trade I have supposed to be carried on, one half by Scots merchants, the other half by English and Dutch. But as most of the trade is carried on by Scots merchants, I shall suppose this state of trade accordingly. The one or the other will clear the matter in question. The state of trade now, and the exchange suppose at 15% to England, and 30% to Holland. The whole export of Scotland will be £300,000, of which £240,000 carried out by Scots merchants, and sold at 30% profit, and charges £325,000. In English money, £282,608. Exported by foreigners for £50,000 in English money, £43,478. The whole export, £326,086. Goods imported, £306,086. Spent abroad, £40,000. Due of balance by Scotland, £20,000. Money being lowered to the English standard and allowed by law to be exported will bring the exchange with England to 2 or 3%, and with Holland to 17 or 18, notwithstanding of the balance due, for as £100 in Edinburgh would then be equal to £100 at London, and being allowed to be exported, none would give above 100 due or 3 here for £100 at London, because the trouble and the charge of sending it to London would be valued no higher, the export, import, and expense abroad supposed to continue the same. A balance would then be due to Scotland. The state of trade, exchange at 3% to England, and proportionably to other places. Due in English money, for £325,000 first cost, charges and profit of goods sent out by Scots merchants, £315,534. Due in English money, for £50,000 of goods exported by foreigners, £48,544. The whole export, £364,600. 78. Of this, deduce the value of goods imported, 306,086. And the expense aboard, 40,000. There will be a balance due to Scotland of 17,992. As this balance due to Scotland would bring exchange to the par and 3% on the Scots side, 3 more because money in England is prohibited to be exported. £100 in Scotland would be worth £106 in England, and proportionably in other places. So the state of trade would then be thus: due in English money for £325,000 first cost, charges and profit of Scots goods sent out by Scots merchants, and £50,000 exported by foreigners, 397,500. Of this spent aboard, 40,000. Imported from abroad, 306,086. Balance due to Scotland, 51,414. If the yearly export be as great as I suppose it, and the balance only £20,000, then lowering the money to the English standard will make a balance due of £51,414, though the money is not allowed to be exported. It may be objected that a certain alteration in the exchange, lowering the value of foreign money, might hinder the sale of our goods abroad. For linen cloth bought in Scotland for £100 and sold in London for £114 yields by exchange 31% profit. But if exchange were 6% on the Scots side, the profit is only 9%. It is answered, if an English merchant takes bills on Scotland for £1,000 to lay out on linen cloth, the exchange then is a par. The linen cloth is sold in England according to the first cost, charges, and the euro profit. Next year, the exchange is on the English side. The linen is sold in England cheaper than before. The third year exchange returns to the par. The linen is then sold in England as the fourth year. If the first cost of linen is dearer, the consumer pays the more for it. The merchant's profit is the same. All nations endeavor to get the exchange as much as they can on their side. The exchange from Holland to England is 12 or 15%, to Scotland 30%, to France 40 or 50, sometimes more. Yet that goods sell in these countries, the merchant has his profit the same as when exchange was lower. The consumer pays more for them. English cloth is sold at Paris from 18 to 20 livres the French ale, when the louis d'or is at 12 livres. From 20 to 23 when the louis d'or is at 14 livres. Because the exchange to England is dearer in proportion as the French money is raised. Most goods sent from Scotland are such as foreigners won't want, though they paid 10 or 20% more for them. We have an example of this in the war, and during the Prohibition, when wool sold in Holland and France for double the first cost. Now it has fallen to 30 or 40% profit. Prices are given for goods according to their first cost, charges, and the euro profit. Where prohibitions are, the hazard of exporting contrary to law is valued. Wool is of less value now in Holland than in time of peace, because the value of their woolen manufacture is less. But though wool were as valuable in Holland as before, and though a Dutch manufacturer would give £200 for wool that costs only £100 in Scotland, rather than want it, yet as he knows the prohibition is taken off, and that the Scots merchants can afford to sell cheaper, he won't buy unless he can have it at a reasonable profit. So either the Scots merchants bring down the price by underselling one another, or the Dutch merchant commissions it himself. If the duty were put on such goods whose value abroad would bear it, the merchant would gain the same, 'tis the foreigner pays the duty. Besides, lowering the money may not lower the prices abroad, for as the money was raised, goods may have risen in proportion, or have been made worse. So, as £100 after the money is lowered, we have 33 crowns and 6 more silver in it than £100 had before. So a greater quantity of goods may be bought with £100 than before, or the goods may be made better, especially the linen cloth, since the material would be imported for less. But allowing that upon the lowering the money, goods sold in Scotland as before, and were made no better, and allowing that 1/3 or more of the goods exported could not be raised in their prices abroad, because foreigners might be served cheaper with the same kind of goods from other places, or might supply the use of them with goods of another kind, or might consume less of them, yet that ought not to hinder such a regulation of the money and exchange, for a drawback might be given upon the export of such goods, whose prices abroad were not great enough to yield a reasonable profit. But unless such an alteration in the exchange, when devaluing foreign money should lessen the export of goods, it may not be advisable, unless a fund were given, out of which drawbacks might be paid to encourage export, and an addition be made to the money, whereby the people may be set to work. For without some addition to the money, it is not to be supposed next year's export can be equal to the last. It will lessen as money has lessened. A part of the people then employed being idle, not for want of inclination to work, or for want of employers, but for want of money to employ them with. End of section 4. Section 13 of Money and Trade considered by John Law. This book's recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7, Part 3. From whence it is evident that the land is more qualified for the use of money than silver, and preferable for that use to silver by the product of Scotland, being more certain in its value, and having the qualities necessary in money in a greater degree, with other qualities that the silver has not, so more capable of being the general measure by which goods are valued, and the value by which goods are exchanged, and in which contracts are taken. If £2,000 of paper money is equal to the property of land worth £2,000 in silver, then that £2,000 of paper money is equal to £2,000 of silver. What buys land will buy everything the land produces, and what buys the product of land will buy all other goods, whether home or foreign. If wine is bought from France, the merchant desires to lay out his money on goods, at interest, or on land. The commission does not receive silver money, so he cannot have a bond from the commission unless he give the value in paper, and many of the landed men won't take silver for their goods or lands, having occasion for paper to pay the commission. So the merchant will choose to sell his wines for paper money, because it will purchase him goods, bonds, or lands where silver money will be equally valuable, and in cases where silver money will not. And then supposing silver were equally qualified for the use of money as land is, but the silver is an uncertain value, and is given for much more than its value as metal, and has not all the qualities necessary in money, nor in so great a degree as paper money, so paper money will for these other reasons be preferred to silver. Some object that a paper money, though upon a good fund and current in the country, it will not be valued abroad, equal to what it were in Scotland. The goods of Scotland will always be valued abroad, equal to goods of the same kind and goodness, and that money, though of paper, which buys goods in Scotland, will buy goods or money in other places. If £1,000 in serges, linen cloth, etc., be worth abroad all charges paid £1,300, the merchant who exports such goods will give a bill for that money at the par, having £1,300 for what cost him 1,000. When a nation establishes money, if the money they set up have a value equal to what it is made money for, and all the other qualities necessary in money, they ought to have no regard of what value it will have in other countries. On the contrary, as every country endeavors by laws to preserve their money, if that people can contrive money that will not be valued abroad, and they will do what other countries have by laws endeavored in vain. And no nation keeps to silver because it is used in other countries. It is because they can find nothing so safe and convenient. And trade betwixt nations is carried on by exchange of goods. And if one merchant sends out goods of less value than he brings home, he has money furnished him abroad by another who brings home for less value than he sent out. If there is no money due abroad, then the merchant who designed to import for a greater value than he exported is restricted, and can only import equal to his export, which is all the many laws to regulate the trade have been endeavoring. It is objected that we are under a necessity of having goods from countries who will take none of ours. France does not allow money to be exported, nor any ship to import goods, unless French goods are exported from the same port, to the value of the goods which were imported. By our law, we are forbidden to export money, but as I don't think the example of nations a good answer, I shall endeavor to give a better. Suppose the money is not valued abroad, and we have occasion for goods from Denmark, who takes none of ours. These goods being necessary here will be valued higher than other goods that are not so necessary, and the value of Scots goods sold in other countries will be carried to Denmark in such goods as will sell there, or in foreign money, and these necessary goods be brought home. Because the trader makes greater profit by them than by such goods as could have been imported from that country, where the goods exported were sold. But this addition to the money will employ the people who are now idle, and this now employed to more advantage. So the product will be increased, and the manufacture advanced. If the consumption of the nation continues as now, the export will be greater, and the balance due to us. And as the exchange depends on the balance, so paper money here will be equal to a greater quantity of silver money abroad. Suppose the yearly value of Scotland 1.5 million, the yearly value of England 40 millions. The value of Scotland is only about 1/28th part of the value of England. Yet the quantity and quality of the lands, and the numbers of people considered, Scotland will be at least as 1 to 6. And if there was money to employ the people, we would be as 1 to 6, for we have advantages peculiar to us that do more than equal the plantation and the East India trades. England is not improved so far as it might be by a greater quantity of money. We may have money equal to the demand by applying a land to that use, so a country may be improved above the proportion of 1 to 6. But if the proposed addition to our money improved the country only so as to bear a proportion with England of 1 to 13, our yearly value would be 3 millions, and our consumption not being half what the same number of people consume in England. If the consumption continued as now, the balance due to Scotland would be greater than the balance due to England. And this addition to our yearly value may be thought by some people a supposition that's extravagant. But I desire these people will consider what consequences the plenty of money has had in other places. As the money for England has increased, the yearly value has increased, and as the money has decreased, the yearly value has decreased. I don't doubt but that the paper money proposed to be given out equal to the demand would bring the yearly value of Scotland to 3 millions, though the fish and other branches of foreign trade which might be improved to a great advantage were neglected. But I suppose the yearly value increased only 500,000, of which a fourth spent in the greater consumption of the product and manufacture of the country, a fourth in the greater consumption of foreign goods and expense abroad, a fourth laid up in magazines of foreign goods, a fourth would still be due of balance and brought home in silver. If the consumption expense increased equal to or beyond the improvement, as the paper money could not be exported, so the people would not be sit idle, nor the manufacture decay. That money being like an estate entailed, we might continue to consume equal to the yearly value, but could not lessen the yearly value, nor be poorer if we would. If a greater value of goods was imported than was exported, and credit given for the balance, foreigners to pay themselves would send lesser valuable goods the year after, but such restrictions may be put on the consumption of our own and foreign goods, as may make a balance due. And the revenue of the Commission will be a greater help toward the advancing of trade in its infancy. What encourages the export of goods, encourages the manufacture of them, and that money given as drawback will not only encourage the export and manufacture, but likewise regain the reputation our goods have lost, and give them a better reputation than the goods of other nations. The drawback ought not to be given to all goods, but to such as do not yield a reasonable profit abroad, and upon condition they are found sufficient. The seal of the office of drawback ought to be applied to these goods that receive the drawback, and these instructed with the drawback should give security to pay the price of such goods, with all charges, if found insufficient. When manufacture and trade prospers, the landed man's rent is well paid, and increases. When they decay, his rent is ill paid, and decreases. A drawback is so effectual a way to encourage and promote manufacturing trade, that it were the landed men's interest to tax themselves, rather than a drawback should not be given where it is necessary. A drawback is more necessary here than in other countries, for we do not manufacture so well as other nations. We are not able to sell for the same profit, our stocks being much smaller, and the goods of other nations will be preferred to ours, because our goods are suspected. Some object that this proposal is new and has not been practiced in any nation. And the example of another nation ought not to determine us to follow the same measures without examining whether that nation was the better or the worse by such measures, and whether our circumstances and theirs do not differ so as to make that hurtful or ineffectual to us which was of advantage to them. On the other hand, it is no argument against anything proposed for the general good to say it is new and what has not been practiced. When anything proposed has been already practiced by other nations, 'tis a presumption in favour of such a proposal, and it's a presumption against it if it has been refused. But a wise nation ought not to be determined by example, to follow or refuse without examining. This proposal has not been refused. The essential part is now practiced in France, for paper is current by law, and though after a manner that in all appearance ought to have hindered its currency, yet I'm informed foreign bills are bought with paper money, the same as with silver or gold. The example of nations in relation to money would be a very uncertain rule, for as has been said at page 70, opposite measures have been used in some countries to what have been used in others, and contrary measures have been used in the same countries to what was used immediately before, not because of any difference in their circumstances, but from the opinion that since the method used had not the effect designed, a contrary would, and there are good reasons to think that the nature of money is not yet rightly understood. Any other objections that I have yet heard against this proposal are such as may be fully answered, and so far as I can see into it, with all the application I have been capable of, I cannot find any objection but what may be fully answered, nor any difficulty in the execution but what may be removed. If there is any fallacy in the positions I lay down, or any wrong consequences drawn from these positions, I have not been able to discover them. End of section 13.